Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto awakened the blood of Kaguya, the soul of the Shinigami, and the power of Arceus, Naruto x Harem, Multiverse. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Awakening. Blood seeped through Naruto's fingers as he pressed his hand against the gaping wound in his chest. The forest around him blurred, trees melting into NCT shadows as his consciousness wavered. Their mission had been classified as A rank, investigate rumors of strange energy fluctuations near the border, but the intel had been catastrophically wrong. No standard enemy shinobi awaited them, but something else entirely, something ancient, something hungry. Captain. Yuki's voice sounded distant despite her kneeling right beside him. Her medical jutsu glowed pale green against his torn flak jacket, but they both knew it wasn't enough. Stay with me. The extraction team is. Get everyone out, Naruto interrupted, tasting copper on his tongue. Now, that's an order. Raindrops fell through the canopy, mingling with the blood pooling beneath him. 23 years old, and this was how it would end, bleeding out on foreign soil while protecting his team. Not quite the path to Hokage he'd imagined as a child. We're not leaving you. Tadashi appeared from the tree line, his usually stoic face betraying rare emotion. The barrier is holding, but not for long. Naruto smiled through pain that should have been unbearable but was now fading to a cold numbness. The mission parameters were clear. If compromised, team survival takes priority over any individual. With all due respect, Captain, Tadashi said, lowering his voice, screw the parameters. Loyal to the end, Naruto chuckled, then winced as the motion sent fresh pain through his torso. That thing out there, it's not something you can fight. Not yet. I bought us time, but it's regenerating. He gripped Tadashi's sleeve with surprising strength. Take what we've learned back to Konoha. They need to know what's awakening out here. A distant roar echoed through the forest, followed by the unmistakable sound of their barrier seals cracking. Whatever had been sealed away centuries ago was breaking free, and his team's barrier jutsus were little more than cobwebs against its power. 3 minutes, said Haruki, the team's censor, dropping beside them with wide eyes. The barrier is failing faster than predicted. Naruto closed his eyes briefly, calculating. 3 minutes wasn't enough time for them all to escape, not with whatever that creature was hunting them. But it might be enough if the creature had something else to focus on. New plan, Naruto said, pushing himself up despite Yuki's protests. Blood fountained from his wound, but he channeled chakra to his limbs, forcing his body to respond one last time. I'll create a diversion. The rest of you head southwest, avoid the river valleys. Get that data to the Hokage. Naruto, Yuki began, using his name instead of his rank for the first time in years. That's suicide. Probably, he agreed, hands already forming seals despite the tremor in his fingers. But we knew that was a possibility when we accepted this mission. Before any of them could argue further, Naruto activated a transportation jutsu he'd modified from his father's technique. Not as instantaneous as the Flying Thunder God, but effective enough to put 20 meters between him and his team in an eye blink. Go, he shouted, already weaving signs for a jutsu that would draw the creature's attention. From his new position, he could see his team hesitate, then follow orders with obvious reluctance. Good. They were excellent shinobi, too valuable to waste here. The creature's presence loomed behind the barrier. A writhing mass of chakra unlike anything he'd encountered before. Not quite Biju, not quite human, but something that didn't belong in this reality. Just you and me now, Naruto muttered, completing a complex sequence of 44 hand signs. The jutsu activated as the barrier shattered. Brilliant golden chains erupted from Naruto's body, a technique he'd spent years trying to recreate from fragmented Uzumaki scrolls. Not quite his mother's adamantine sealing chains, but his own variation. The chains shot toward the emerging creature, wrapping around its amorphous form. The thing screeched, a sound that made the air itself vibrate. Its body seemed to flicker between states, sometimes solid, sometimes liquid chakra, sometimes nothing but a rip in the fabric of reality. Where the chains touched it, reality itself seemed to warp. What are you? Naruto gasped, blood now flowing freely from his mouth as he maintained the chakra-intensive jutsu. The creature didn't answer with words. Instead, it pulled against the chains, dragging Naruto forward. Each movement tore his wound wider, but he refused to release the jutsu. Not until his team was safely away. Time slowed as his vision darkened around the edges. The rain seemed to hang suspended in the air, individual droplets catching what little light penetrated the forest canopy. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, growing more irregular with each passing second. So this is how it ends, he thought with strange clarity. Not with some grand sacrifice saving the village, just buying time for 4 people in a forest no one will remember. As his consciousness began to fade, the creature surged forward, breaking several of the chakra chains. One of its appendages, something between a claw and a tendril of pure energy, plunged into Naruto's chest wound. Pain beyond imagining erupted through his body. This wasn't just physical agony, it was as if every cell was being unmade and rewritten simultaneously. Naruto tried to scream, but no sound emerged. The world around him fractured like broken glass, each shard showing a different reality. And then he was falling through darkness. The void stretched endlessly in all directions, yet somehow felt confining. Naruto floated in nothingness, no longer bleeding, no longer in pain, but acutely aware he was neither alive nor dead, suspended between states. Interesting, said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. You are not what I expected. A figure materialized before him, a woman with pale skin, white hair, and most distinctively, 2 horns protruding from her head. Her eyes held the ripple pattern of the Rinnegan, but with Tomo spinning lazily within the purple rings. Kaguya Otsutsuki, Naruto whispered, recognition immediate day. Pite having never seen her outside ancient temple depictions and wartime intelligence reports. A fragment only, she corrected, studying him with clinical detachment. A memory preserved in blood. Your blood, distant son. I'm not your. All who carry chakra are my descendants, she interrupted. But you carry more than most. The potential slumbered in your lineage, dormant until now. Before Naruto could respond, the darkness shifted. Kaguya's form dissolved, replaced by a towering entity cloaked in flowing white robes. A skeletal face peered from beneath its hood, eyes burning with cold fire. In one hand, it held a knife, in the other, prayer beads. Shinigami, Naruto breathed, recognizing the death god from forbidden scrolls he'd studied during his time with Anbu. Part of me resides in all who walk the boundary between worlds, the death god's voice rasped like dry leaves blown across stone. You have crossed many boundaries, Naruto Uzumaki. More than you know. The entity reached forward, skeletal fingers passing through Naruto's chest without resistance. Your soul resonates with mine. An echo from when your father summoned me, perhaps, or something older. Something waiting to awaken. Again, the darkness shifted. Both Kaguya and the Shinigami faded, replaced by blinding light that coalesced into a quadrupedal being unlike anything Naruto had seen. Its body shimmered with colors beyond normal perception, a golden wheel-like structure extending from its midsection. I am Arceus, came a voice directly into Naruto's mind. Creator of worlds beyond your knowing. Why am I seeing you? Naruto asked, finding his voice at last. Why any of you? Am I dead? Not dead, Arceus responded. Transforming. Where 3 streams converge, a new river forms. I don't understand. Understanding comes with awakening, the being said. The blood of the celestial. The soul of death. The power of creation. All 3 flow within you now, activated by encounter with that which should not exist. The light surrounding Arceus intensified until Naruto had to shield his eyes. Wait, what am I supposed to do? What's happening to me? Live, came T. His simple answer as the light consumed everything. Naruto awoke with a desperate gasp, his body arching off the ground as air flooded his lungs. Rain pelted his face, cold and cleansing. His hands instinctively went to his chest, expecting to find the gaping wound, but his fingers met only torn fabric and unbroken skin beneath. Confusion clouded his thoughts as he pushed himself up to sitting position. His flak jacket and undershirt were shredded and soaked with blood, but the fatal wound had vanished completely. Not healed. There wasn't even a scar, but as if it had never existed at all. The forest around him had changed. Where the creature had emerged, reality itself seemed wounded. Trees grew at impossible angles, some partially phased into each other. The ground rippled like water in places, and the air shimmered with colors that had no names. What the hell? He muttered, staggering to his feet. His reflection in a nearby puddle caught his attention. Naruto froze, staring at himself with growing alarm. His normally blue eyes now contained ripples, concentric circles reminiscent of the Rinnegan, but with 3 tomo in each eye's outermost ring. As he watched, the pattern faded, returning his eyes to their natural blue. A sound like glass breaking echoed through the distorted forest. Naruto spun toward it, instinctively dropping into a defensive stance. The air split open 10 meters away, forming what appeared to be a tear in reality itself. Through it, he glimpsed another place entirely, a barren landscape under crimson skies. "That's not good," he whispered, backing away slowly. The rift collapsed as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving only disturbed air in its wake. Naruto remained tense, scanning the forest for additional anomalies. His senses felt heightened, expanded somehow. He could perceive chakra in ways he never had before, not just in living beings, but in the environment itself, in the spaces between things. He needed to get back to Konoha immediately. Whatever had happened to him, whatever that creature had been, the village needed to be warned. And he needed answers about his impossible recovery and the visions he'd experienced. Centering himself, Naruto tried to sense his team's chakra signatures, but they were long gone, hopefully safely on their way back to the village. Good. He'd bought them the time they needed, even if the cost had been unexpected. With one last look at the distorted section of forest, Naruto began moving through the trees, heading southwest toward Konoha. As he traveled, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed, that he had changed in ways he didn't yet understand. 3 days later, Naruto stood before the massive gates of Konoha, his body tense with anticipation. The journey back had been strange, marked by moments when his perception would suddenly shift, allowing him to see things that shouldn't exist, spirits drifting alongside the living, thin places where realities brushed against each other. The flow of natural energy in patterns he'd never noticed before. The guards at the gate stared at him in shock, their chakra signatures flaring with surprise and confusion. "Captain Uzumaki." Azumo approached cautiously. "Your team reported you were killed in action." "Reports of my death were premature," Naruto replied with a tired smile. "As the Hokage available, I need to report immediately." "Of course. They've been waiting for the recovery team to bring back your..." Azumo trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. "Well, they'll want to see you right away." As Naruto walked through the village streets, he noted the curious stares and whispered conversations following in his wake. News of his survival would spread quickly. He kept his pace steady despite the exhaustion weighing on him. The strange energy that had healed him seemed to have withdrawn into dormancy, leaving him functioning on willpower alone. The Hokage Tower loomed ahead, unchanged, yet somehow different to his enhanced perception. Layers of protective seals and barriers were now visible to him, glowing with complex patterns of chakra. Had they always been there, unseen until now? Naruto. He turned at the sound of his name to find Sakura staring at him, her expression caught between disbelief and joy. Before he could speak, she closed the distance between them and pulled him into a tight embrace. "We thought you were dead," she whispered fiercely. "Your team brought back your blood-soaked jacket. How are you here? What happened?" "It's complicated," Naruto replied, gently extracting himself from her grip. "I'm not entirely sure myself. Is Kakashi in his office? I need to report what happened." Sakura nodded, studying his face with professional scrutiny. "You look different somehow." "Feel different too," he admitted. "But I'm alive. I'll walk with you," she insisted. "If you collapse, I want a medic nearby." They ascended the tower together, silence stretching between them. Naruto appreciated that she didn't press for details. Sakura understood mission protocols better than most. The Hokage's office door opened before they could knock, revealing Shikamaru with an expression of carefully controlled surprise. "Troublesome as always," he said, though relief softened his features. The Hokage's waiting. Inside, Kakashi sat behind his desk. his visible eye widening slightly at Naruto's appearance. Beside him stood Naruto's team, all 4 members looking tired but uninjured. Their chakra signatures spiked with shock and relief as he entered. "Captain Uzumaki," Kakashi said formally, though emotion underlay his professional tone. "Your report was most unexpected. Less unexpected than my being here at all, I imagine," Naruto replied. Kakashi gestured for everyone except Shikamaru to leave. Once the door closed, his posture relaxed slightly. "You were confirmed killed in action, Naruto. Your team saw you take a mortal wound. They described something impossible happening afterward. What they saw was accurate," Naruto confirmed, sinking into a chair as fatigue caught up with him. "I should have died out there." Instead, he recounted everything: the creature, his fatal injury, the strange visions of Kaguya, the Shinigami, and Arceus, and his inexplicable healing. He described the distortions in the forest and the rifts he'd witnessed on his journey back. When he finished, silence filled the office. Kakashi and Shikamaru exchanged glances laden with unspoken concerns. During the war, Kakashi finally said, "We encountered many unusual phenomena. But rifts between dimensions, that's something new. And these changes to your eyes. It's happened twice more since I woke up," Naruto admitted. "I can't control it yet. When it happens, I see everything. Chakra, spirits, the boundaries between worlds. It's overwhelming." Shikamaru leaned against the wall, his posture casual but his eyes sharp. "The timing is concerning. There have been reports from across the continent of unusual phenomena. Strange weather, unexplained chakra fluctuations, even ghosts appearing in broad daylight." "Whatever that creature was," Naruto said, "it wasn't from our world. At least, not entirely. And I think it changed me somehow." He hesitated, then added, "Or maybe it just woke up something that was already there." Kakashi steepled his fingers. "You'll need to be examined by our best medical nin and seal experts. Until we understand what's happening, this information stays classified at the highest level." "There's something else," Naruto said reluctantly. I think I'm causing some of the distortions. When my emotions spike or my chakra flares, reality seems to warp around me. Nothing major yet, but it's getting stronger. Then we'll need to assign someone to monitor you," Kakashi replied. "Someone with specialized visual prowess who can track these changes." "A Hyuga," Shikamaru suggested. "Their Byakugan might perceive what's happening to your chakra network." Naruto nodded tiredly. "Whatever you think is best. I just want to understand what's happening to me." "Get some rest," Kakashi said, his tone softening. "Report to the hospital tomorrow morning. Sakura will oversee your examination personally." As Naruto rose to leave, Kakashi added, "And Naruto, I'm glad you made it back." "So am I," he replied, though uncertainty shadowed his words. "I think, Mitsuki Hyuga knelt before her clan elders, her long indigo hair falling forward to partially obscure her face. At 22, she had risen through the branch family ranks to become one of their most accomplished members, a feat that earned her respect but also careful scrutiny from the main family. "You understand the sensitivity of this assignment," Elder Hiyashi said, his stern voice echoing in the traditional meeting chamber. "Yes, Elder," she replied, keeping her eyes respectfully lowered. "I am to monitor Naruto Uzumaki and report any unusual chakra manifestations or dimensional anomalies. This goes beyond standard observation," Hiyashi continued. "Your particular ability makes you uniquely qualified." Mitsuki tensed slightly at the reference to her mutation. While all Hyuga possessed the Byakugan, hers had developed differently during puberty. Where others saw chakra networks and physical obstructions, she could perceive spiritual energy and the boundaries between dimensional planes. A useful ability in theory, but one that had marked her as different within a clan that prized tradition and conformity. "The Hokage believes Uzumaki may be experiencing some form of bloodline awakening," another elder explained. "Possibly connected to his Uzumaki heritage, or perhaps to his former status as a Jinchuriki. Or something else entirely," Hiyashi added, his tone grave. "Your orders come directly from the Hokage, but you will also report your findings to the clan council. Any dimensional instabilities could threaten Konoha's security, and potentially the Hyuga's position." "Always politics," Mitsuki thought, keeping her expression neutral. I understand my responsibilities, both to the village and to the clan. You've been assigned quarters in the same building as Uzumaki, Hiyashi continued. Your cover is that you're conducting research on chakra network variations in form. Urge and Cherokee, plausible given your medical training. You'll begin tomorrow. As you wish, Elder. Mitsuki bowed lower, hiding the spark of interest she couldn't quite suppress. She had, of course, heard of Naruto Uzumaki, war hero. Former Anbu captain, and reportedly next in line for Hokage. His sudden resurrection, after being declared killed in action, had set the entire village buzzing with speculation. One more thing, Hiyashi said as she rose to leave. If you observe anything that could potentially benefit the Hyuga, anything that could be adapted to our techniques, you will report it immediately and exclusively to me. There it was, the real reason a branch family member had been selected for this sensitive assignment. If something went wrong, she was expendable. If something valuable was discovered, the main family would claim it. Of course, Elder Hiyashi, she replied with practiced deference. The clan's interests are paramount. As she left the Hyuga compound, Mitsuki activated her Byakugan briefly, scanning the village in the direction of the hospital where Naruto Uzumaki was reportedly undergoing examination. Even at this distance, something about his chakra signature seemed wrong. Not malevolent, but fundamentally altered in ways that made her enhanced vision strain to interpret it. Whatever had happened to Naruto Uzumaki in that forest, it had changed him on levels most shinobi couldn't perceive. But she could, and that both frightened and fascinated her. The hospital room felt more like an interrogation chamber than a medical facility. Seals covered the walls, floor, and ceiling, containment seals, perception-enhancing seals, chakra-dampening seals, and others Naruto didn't recognize. He sat shirtless on an examination table while Sakura methodically documented every reading from various instruments and jutsu. This makes no sense, she muttered, reviewing her notes for the third time. Your chakra network has completely restructured itself. There are pathways here that shouldn't exist, connecting to tenketsu points that no human has ever possessed. Naruto watched her with tired resignation. The past 18 hours had been a blur of tests, questions, and more tests. Is that bad? It's unprecedented, Sakura replied, frustration evident in her voice. Physically, you're in perfect health. Better than perfect, actually. Why? Our cellular regeneration rate exceeds even your previous healing factor by an order of magnitude. But your chakra, it's not just yours anymore. There are at least 3 distinct energy signatures intertwined with your natural chakra. The visions I had, Naruto said. Kaguya, the Shinigami, and Arceus. Could they have left something behind? Possibly. Sakura set down her clipboard and faced him directly. Naruto, I need to ask, are you still you? The question struck deeper than she probably intended. I think so, he replied slowly. I feel like myself, but more like parts of me that were always supposed to be there have finally woken up. He met her concerned gaze. I'm still me, Sakura. I'm just not sure what me means anymore. Before she could respond, the door opened to admit Kakashi and a young woman Naruto didn't recognize. She wore the traditional Hyuga robes, but her indigo hair and slightly more angular features distinguished her from most of the clan members he knew. Naruto, this is Mitsuki Hyuga, Kakashi introduced. She'll be working with you to monitor the changes in your condition. Naruto studied her curiously. No offense, but why her specifically? There are more experienced Hyuga. Mitsuki possesses a specialized variation of the Byakugan, Kakashi explained. One particularly suited to observing dimensional anomalies. The woman bowed formally. It's an honor to meet you, Captain Uzumaki. I've studied your contributions during the 4th Shinobi War extensively. Something in her tone suggested she was reciting a prepared introduction. Naruto wondered what she'd been told about him, and about her real purpose in monitoring him. Just Naruto is fine, he replied, offering a tired smile. I haven't been captain since I left Anbu last year. Perhaps you could demonstrate your ability, Kakashi suggested to Mitsuki. So Naruto understands what you'll be looking for. Mitsuki nodded and formed a hand sign. Byakugan. The V-Eins around her eyes bulged as her Kekkei Genkai activated, but Naruto immediately noticed differences from the standard Byakugan. While the typical Hyuga eyes became blank white, hers developed a faint iridescent sheen. And the pupil remained visible as a darker point within the white. She gasped softly, taking an involuntary step backward. "What do you see?" Kakashi asked sharply. "It's complex," she replied, her composure slipping momentarily. "His primary chakra network is intact, but it's encased in 3 distinct energy fields that shouldn't be compatible with each other. There's a celestial chakra pattern I've only seen in ancient scrolls, a spiritual energy matrix that's interacting with nearby souls, and something else entirely that I can't even categorize." "Souls?" Naruto interrupted. "What do you mean by nearby souls?" Mitsuki shifted her gaze around the room. "There are 4 spirits present besides the living occupants. 2 appear to be former patients who died in this hospital. 1 is a shinobi, missing his left arm, probably from the recent war. And the 4th," she focused on a point just behind Naruto's left shoulder. "The 4th is attached to you somehow. A woman with long red hair." Naruto's breath caught. "My mother," he whispered. "I can't identify specific spirits," Mitsuki explained apologetically. "But this one's energy is intertwined with ours in a way that suggests a blood connection." Sakura exchanged a concerned look with Kakashi. "I'm not detecting any spirits with my techniques." "You wouldn't," Mitsuki replied. "Standard Medica, El Ninjutsu focuses on physical and chakra systems, not spiritual entities." She deactivated her Byakugan, blinking as her eyes returned to their normal pale lavender. "What's most concerning are the dimensional fractures beginning to form around Naruto." "Fractures?" Kakashi prompted. "Small tears in reality," she clarified. "Currently no larger than a grain of rice, but they're growing. They appear and disappear randomly, primarily when his chakra fluctuates." Naruto absorbed this information with growing unease. "So I'm what? Leaking holes in reality? How do I stop it?" "That's what we need to determine," Kakashi said. "Mitsuki will monitor your condition while we consult with experts in space-time ninjutsu. In the meantime, you'll be assigned to non-combat duties within the village." "You mean I'm grounded?" Naruto translated flatly. "Think of it as a precaution," Kakashi replied. "Until we understand what's happening, we need to minimize potential risks." Naruto wanted to argue but knew Kakashi was right. If he was creating dimensional rifts without even trying, what might happen in the heat of battle? He nodded reluctantly. "Fine. What's my cover story?" "People will notice if I suddenly stop taking missions. Medical evaluation following your near-death experience," Sakura suggested. "Standard protocol, especially given the unusual circumstances of your recovery." "And my new shadow." Naruto glanced at Mitsuki, who maintained a carefully neutral expression. "Research collaboration," Kakashi said smoothly. "The official story is that Mitsuki is studying the long-term effects of Biju chakra on human chakra networks, with you as her primary subject." It was a plausible cover, Naruto had to admit. After the war, there had been numerous studies on former Jinchuriki and how their bodies adapted after the extraction of their Biju. "When do we start?" he asked Mitsuki directly. "Immediately," she replied. "I've been assigned quarters in building to facilitate continuous observation." Great, Naruto thought. A Hyuga babysitter with clan politics undoubtedly complicating everything. Just what he needed on top of reality-bending powers he couldn't control. "Then I guess we're partners," he said, extending his hand to her. "Looking forward to being your research subject, Mitsuki." She hesitated briefly before accepting his handshake. "I'll endeavor to be unobtrusive. Captain Uzumaki." "Naruto," he corrected again. "And somehow, I doubt anything about this situation is going to be unobtrusive." Mitsuki stood on the balcony of her newly assigned apartment, watching the sunset paint Konoha in shades of amber and gold. The building was modest by Konoha standards, a 4-story structure in the newer district that had been rebuilt after Pain's attack years ago. Naruto's apartment was directly above hers, allowing her to monitor him even through the ceiling with her enhanced Byakugan. She'd spent the afternoon arranging her sparse belongings and setting up the specialized equipment the research division had provided. Most of it was standard chakra monitoring apparatus, but some had been modified based on her specifications to detect the specific dimensional anomalies she perceived. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. When she opened it, Naruto stood in the hallway, holding a small potted plant. Housewarming gift, he explained with a slightly awkward smile. Thought your place might need something living to balance out all the monitoring equipment. Surprised by the gesture, Mitsuki EPTED the plant, a compact bamboo arrangement. Thank you. That's thoughtful. Mind if I come in? He asked. Figured we should probably talk if you're going to be watching my every move for the foreseeable future. She hesitated only briefly before stepping aside. Of course. Naruto entered, his gaze sweeping over the apartment with open curiosity. Where most people might have tried to hide their surveillance equipment, Mitsuki had set everything up in plain view on a desk by the window. No point pretending this was anything other than what it was. Nice place, he commented, though Hey both knew it was practically identical to his own apartment upstairs. Very organized. Hyuga preference, she replied automatically, placing the bamboo plant beside a monitoring device. We tend toward minimalism, I noticed. Naruto settled onto her couch without waiting for an invitation. Not rudely, but with the casual confidence of someone accustomed to making himself at home wherever he went. So, Mitsuki Hyuga, tell me something that's not in your official file. The request caught her off guard. Excuse me, if we're going to be working together, we should know each other, he explained. And I'm guessing you've already read everything there is to know about me. She had, in fact, spent hours reviewing his file, from his academy records to his classified Anbu missions. That's standard protocol for any assignment. Exactly, he said with a knowing smile. So you have me at a disadvantage. Tell me something about yourself that isn't in any report. Mitsuki read his request while taking a seat in the chair opposite him. What could she share that wouldn't compromise her professional detachment or reveal clan secrets? I collect unusual teas, she finally offered. Specifically, varieties that affect chakra flow in subtle ways. It started as research into natural chakra modulators, but became something of a hobby. Naruto's expression brightened with genuine interest. Really, I never considered that tea could affect chakra systems. Most people don't, she replied, warming slightly to the topic. But certain herbs, when properly cultivated and prepared, can temporarily enhance specific aspects of chakra flow. Nothing dramatic enough for combat applications, but useful for meditation or chakra control exercises. That explains the collection. Naruto nodded toward her kitchen, where several labeled containers sat on a shelf. Any recommendations for someone whose chakra is currently punching holes in reality? The question was asked lightly, but Mitsuki detected the underlying concern in his tone. Perhaps White Mountain Sage, she suggested after a moment's consideration. It's known for its stabilizing properties. Though I doubt it would have much effect on your unique condition. Worth a try, he shrugged. Better than sitting around waiting for the next dimensional hiccup. Mitsuki studied him with clinical interest. Despite his casual demeanor, his chakra betrayed his anxiety, flowing in erratic patterns that occasionally created those microscopic reality fractures she'd described earlier. May I ask you something in return? She ventured. Seems fair. What does it feel like when your eyes change or when you perceive these other dimensions? Naruto considered the question seriously. It's like suddenly seeing in colors that don't exist. Everything familiar becomes strange, but in a way that makes more sense than before. He gestured vaguely. Right now, looking at you, I see a person. But when it happens, I see layers, physical body, chakra network, spiritual essence, temporal threads connecting past and future versions of you. It's beautiful and terrifying at the same time. And the power itself, she pressed, fascinated despite her professional reserve. Can you control it at all? Not yet, he admitted. It comes in flashes, usually triggered by strong emotions or physical strain. When it does, he trailed off, his expression darkening. It feels like I could unmake the world if I wanted to. Or create something entirely new. That's the scariest part, knowing what might happen if I lose control completely. The raw honesty in his answer surprised her. Most shinobi of his caliber, especially those with Anbu training, guarded their vulnerabilities carefully. Yet he spoke openly about his fears, without apparent concern for how she might report his words to her clan or the Hokage. Thank you for your candor, she said formally, unsure how else to respond. Naruto smiled, a genuine expression that reached his eyes. No point hiding things from someone who can literally see through me, right? He stood, stretching casually. I should let you settle in. Early start tomorrow. 0700 hours, she confirmed. The research division has prepared a specialized training ground for initial capability assessment. Sounds exciting, he replied dryly. Just promise me one thing. What's that? If I start going all-power mad deity on you, don't hesitate to shut me down. His tone was light, but his eyes held serious intent. Whatever's happening to me, I don't want anyone getting hurt because of it. The request revealed more about Naruto Uzumaki than any file Mitsuki had studied. Despite potentially godlike powers awakening within him, his first concern was for others' safety. I promise, she said simply, though I doubt it will come to that. After he left, Mitsuki activated her Byakugan and tracked his movement up to his apartment. His chakra signature pulsed with complex patterns that defied conventional analysis. The three overlapping energy systems Sakura had identified were clearly visible to her enhanced perception, but there was something else. A fourth pattern emerging where the other three intersected, something entirely new taking form. She deactivated her Kekkei Genkei and made careful notes in the journal provided by the research division. Whatever was happening to Naruto Uzumaki went beyond any documented bloodline awakening or power transfer. He was becoming something unprecedented, something that might not be entirely human anymore. And she, a branch family member with a mutation the clan mostly regarded as a curiosity, was the only one who could truly see it happening. Dreams had always been vivid for Naruto, aside of sharing his consciousness with Kurama for so many years. But the dreams that came that night were something else entirely, not products of his subconscious, but windows into other realities. He stood in a vast chamber carved from living crystal, its faceted surfaces reflecting light in impossible patterns. Before him, three figures shimmered into existence, the same entities he'd encountered in his near-death vision. He awakens, Kaguya observed, her Rinne Sharingan eyes studying him intently. Faster than anticipated, the catalyst was unexpected, the Shinigami rasped. The boundary creature accelerated the process. The convergence approaches, Arceus added, its mental voice resonating through the crystal chamber. Three powers becoming one, would one of you mind explaining what's happening to me? Naruto demanded, his patience wearing thin. Why me? What am I becoming? Kaguya approached, her movements graceful and alien. You are the convergence point of three bloodlines. Three powers that were never meant to meet in one vessel. My bloodline, she continued, carries the celestial chakra that gave birth to all jutsu in your world. The Otsutsuki are not of your dimension, but travelers who spread our essence across many realities. The Shinigami glided forward, death emanating from its spectral form. My essence entered your bloodline when your father sacrificed himself using my power. The seal he created formed a bridge between life and death, one that you crossed when the Nine Tails was extracted from you during the war. And my power, Arceus communicated, exists in all things that create and maintain reality. Your Uzumaki lineage carries a fragment of the original one, what some call the Alpha, from a world parallel to yours where the laws of nature follow different paths. So I'm what, some kind of triple hybrid? Naruto asked incredulously. You are becoming the Nexus, Kaguya corrected. A point where dimensions intersect and converge. Such a being emerges perhaps once in a billion years, across all possible realities. The boundary creature recognized what you could become, the Shinigami added. It sought to consume your potential before you could fully awaken. Quote, had it succeeded, Arceus warned, all realities would have suffered. Some would have collapsed entirely. Naruto struggled to process the implications. And now, what happens now that these powers are awakening? That, Kaguya said with something almost like anticipation, depends entirely on you. The crystal chamber began to fracture around them, hards of reality breaking apart to reveal the void beyond. As the dream collapsed, Naruto caught a glimpse of something massive moving between dimensions, the same creature that had attacked his team, but larger now. Hunting across realities. It's still out there, he realized with growing horror. And it's getting stronger. As are you, came Arceus's final words as the dream dissolved completely. But will you be strong enough when worlds collide? Naruto awoke with a gasp, his body drenched in cold sweat. The room around him pulsed with ethereal light as dozens of tiny rifts opened and closed in rapid succession. Objects floated momentarily before crashing back down as gravity reasserted itself. A sharp knock came at his door, followed by Mitsuki's concerned voice, "Naruto. Are you all right? I'm detecting multiple dimensional anomalies." He staggered to the door and opened it to find her standing in the hallway, Byakugan activated, her expression a mixture of scientific fascination and personal concern. "We have a problem," he told her grimly. "That thing that attacked my team, it's still out there. And I think it's hunting me across dimensions." The specialized training ground resembled a cross between a laboratory and a containment facility. Located underground beneath the Hokage mountain, the vast chamber had been retrofitted with sealing arrays, chakra dampeners, and monitoring equipment. A small observation room overlooked the main floor, where several scientists and specialists watched with barely concealed excitement. "The readings are unprecedented," one researcher murmured as Naruto entered alongside Mitsuki. "His chakra signature keeps shifting between three distinct patterns." "Focus on the spatial distortions," another replied. "If those microrifts expand, we'll need to activate the containment seals immediately." Naruto pretended not to hear them, though his enhanced senses picked up every word. He'd spent the early morning hours briefing Mitsuki on his dream vision. Then together they'd reported to Kakashi before being directed to this facility. Now, dressed in standard training attire, he stood in the center of an intricate ceiling. While various instruments recorded his every fluctuation. "We'll start with baseline readings," announced Shizune, who had been appointed to oversee the research team. "Naruto, please perform a simple chakra molding exercise. Nothing complex, just basic manipulation." Naruto nodded and formed the Ram seal, focusing on circulating his chakra in the pattern taught to academy students. Immediately, he sensed something wrong. His chakra refused to flow normally, instead branching into three distinct streams that fought against each other. "Interesting," Mitsuki commented from beside him, her Byakugan active. "The celestial chakra is dominant in your upper network, while the spiritual energy concentrates around your heart and the creation energy flows primarily through your lower chakra gates." "It feels wrong," Naruto grimaced, struggling to maintain the simple exercise. "Like trying to mix oil, water, and fire all at once." Around him, the air shimmered as tiny rifts, no larger than pinpricks, opened and closed in rapid succession. The monitoring equipment beeped urgently as researchers scrambled to record the phenomenon. "Try channeling each energy separately," Mitsuki suggested. "Focus on just the celestial chakra first." Naruto closed his eyes, mentally visualizing his chakra network as Mitsuki had described it. He concentrated on the upper pathways where the celestial chakra, Kaguya's legacy, seemed strongest. To his surprise, it responded readily, flowing with liquid grace through his system. When he opened his eyes, Mitsuki gasped softly. "Your eyes." One of the researchers thrust a mirror in front of him. Naruto's reflection showed his eyes transformed, concentric purple rings with 3 tomo in the outermost ring. Not quite the Rinnegan, not quite the Sharingan, but something that incorporated elements of both. "Can you see differently?" Shizune asked, making notes rapidly. "Everything," Naruto whispered, overwhelmed by the flood of visual information. "Chakra networks, cellular structures, the flow of time around objects, and something else." He turned slowly, scanning the facility. "There are seals hidden in this room, ancient ones beneath the newer arrays. And," he pointed to an apparently empty corner. "Someone's there, not physically, but watching from another plane of existence." The research team exchanged alarmed glances. Technician hastily checked a monitoring device, then paled. "He's right about the hidden seals. This facility was originally constructed during the Second Hokage's time. The Foundation contains containment arrays we didn't know about." "And the observer?" Shizune pressed. Mitsuki shifted her Byakugan toward the corner Naruto had indicated. "There is something. Not quite a spirit, not quite physical. More like an echo of awareness from elsewhere. Try the second energy now," Shizune instructed, her professional demeanor hiding her growing unease. "The spiritual connection." Naruto allowed the celestial chakra to recede. focusing instead on the energy concentrated around his heart. This flow felt colder, heavier, like liquid metal in his veins. As it spread through his network, the temperature in the room dropped noticeably. Frost crystals formed on the nearest monitoring equipment. The spiritual essence is manifesting physically, Mitsuki reported, her breath visible in the suddenly frigid air. And there are others appearing. Translucent figures began materializing throughout the chamber, indistinct humanoid forms with hollow eyes. The researchers backed away in alarm as one spirit drifted through a solid wall. They're responding to him, Mitsuki continued, her voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. Like he's a beacon drawing them from the pure world. Naruto felt a strange affinity with the spirits, understanding without words what they were and why they had appeared. They're lost, he explained quietly. Souls that never found their way to the Pure Land. They're drawn to the Shinigami's essence. One spirit, a young woman with sad eyes, approached Naruto directly. When she reached toward him, her translucent hand passed into his chest. Immediately, Naruto gasped as memories that weren't his own flooded his consciousness. Her name was Kaide, he said, his voice overlapping with a feminine tone. She died during the Nine Tails attack 23 years ago. Her body was never recovered, so her family couldn't perform proper funeral rites. He looked up at the watching researchers. She needs to be acknowledged so she can move on. Shizune exchanged glances with her team before cautiously stepping forward. We acknowledge you, Kaide. Your sacrifice is honored, and your family still lights incense for you at the memorial stone. The spirit seemed to brighten at these words, her form becoming more distinct momentarily before dissolving into particles of light that drifted upward and disappeared. She's gone to the Pure Land, Naruto said. Feeling the connection sever, the acknowledgement was what she needed. This is unprecedented, one researcher whispered. He's functioning as a psychopomp, a guide for the dead. Try the third energy now. Shizune instructed after the remaining spirits had faded from view. But carefully, the creation energy seems the most volatile. Naruto let the spiritual essence recede and focused on the third power, the one flowing through his lower chakra gates. This energy felt different from the others, vibrant, dynamic, almost playful as it responded to his direction. Wrath, earthen flowing through existing pathways, it seemed to create new ones as it moved. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The air around Naruto began to shimmer with prismatic light as symbols appeared on his skin, glowing hieroglyphs that shifted and changed continuously. The floor beneath his feet transformed, ordinary stone becoming crystalline and sprouting small flowers that shouldn't have been able to grow in such conditions. Reality manipulation, Mitsuki observed with clinical precision that belied her astonishment. He's altering the fundamental properties of matter within his immediate vicinity. Naruto extended his hand experimentally, focusing on the air above his palm. In response, molecules rearranged themselves, forming a small, perfect sphere of water that hovered and rotated slowly. I'm not using any jutsu, he explained, equally amazed. I'm just asking the elements to change form, and they're listening. The power of creation, Shizune murmured. Like the sage of six paths. But without the limitations of chakra-based techniques. As fascinating as the demonstration was, Naruto could feel the strain of maintaining control over this third power. The water sphere began to distort, its molecules vibrating erratically as his concentration wavered. I can't hold it, he warned, releasing the technique. The water dissolved back into air molecules, but not before briefly transforming into several other states of matter in rapid succession. That's enough for today, Shizune declared, noting his fatigue. These initial tests confirm what we suspect. You're manifesting three distinct power systems that have never before coexisted in a single individual. And they don't particularly want to coexist now, Naruto added wearily. They fight against each other when I try to use them simultaneously. That may be the key, Mitsuki suggested, deactivating her Byakugan. Learning to harmonize these energies rather than using them separately could stabilize the dimensional rifts. Or cause an even bigger problem, one researcher muttered, though not quietly enough to escape Naruto's enhanced hearing. As the research team began shutting down equipment and analyzing their data, Mitsuki approached Naruto with an uncharacteristic hesitation. There's something I didn't mention in front of the others, she said quietly. When you were channeling the creation energy, I saw something concerning. More concerning than me warping reality. Naruto asked with a weak attempt at humor. The microrifts weren't random, she explained. They were forming a pattern. Something like a summoning array, but on a dimensional scale. Almost as if something was using my power to create a doorway, Naruto finished, the dream vision returning to him with sudden clarity. The boundary creature. It's trying to reach this dimension through me. Mitsuki nodded grimly. We should inform the Hokage immediately. As they left the facility, neither noticed the smallest of the rifts remaining open behind them, a pinprick in reality that shouldn't have been possible within the heavily warded chamber. Through this tiny opening, something observed, something waited. Something hungered for the power now awakening in Naruto Uzumaki. The hunt had begun. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Dimensions Apart. Snowflakes drifted through steel-gray skies, swirling around the sleek monorail as it glided across the frozen landscape. Inside the lead car, Naruto pressed his forehead against the triple-paned window, watching pristine white mountains rise in the distance. 3 weeks had passed since the tests in Konoha's underground facility, 3 weeks of increasing dimensional instabilities and hastily compiled reports that ultimately led to this diplomatic mission to the Land of Snow. The frequency of the rifts has increased by 16% since yesterday, Mitsuki noted, her voice pitched low enough that only Naruto could hear her. She hadn't deactivated her Byakugan since they'd left Konoha, maintaining constant vigilance over the microscopic tears in reality that followed Naruto like persistent shadows. Tell me something I don't already feel, he muttered, absently rubbing his temples. Each new rift sent a corresponding pulse through his nervous system, tiny electrical shocks that were gradually becoming more painful. Any Lu. CK deciphering that pattern you mentioned. Mitsuki hesitated, glancing toward the other occupants of the car, 2 Snow Country officials engrossed in their data tablets and a stoic Anbu operative pretending to be an ordinary bodyguard. It's evolving, she finally answered. The configuration shifts whenever you sleep, becoming incrementally more complex. I've been documenting the changes, but without historical precedent. She left the implication hanging. Without precedent, they were navigating uncharted territory, a fact that had prompted Kakashi to dispatch them to the one place that GHT offers scientific insight into Naruto's condition. The Land of Snow, once known primarily for its harsh climate and isolationist policies, had transformed dramatically under Princess Koyuki Kazuhana's leadership. Following her ascension to the throne over a decade ago, the princess had leveraged her country's unique chakra-conducting mineral deposits to pioneer revolutionary technologies. What began as specialized armor and weapons had evolved into an entire research field dedicated to the intersection of chakra and technology, making Snow Country the most scientifically advanced nation on the continent. We're approaching Yukigakure Station, announced one of the officials, a bespectacled woman whose formal attire couldn't quite conceal her military bearing. Princess Koyuki has G'd for your immediate transport to the Dimensional Research Institute upon arrival. No formal reception, Naruto asked, surprised by the deviation from diplomatic protocol. The woman, Tanaka, if he recalled correctly, adjusted her glasses with precise movements. The princess felt that, given the sensitive nature of your visit, discretion would be preferable to ceremony. Naruto exchanged glances with Mitsuki, whose slight nod confirmed his suspicion. Their mission parameters had been shared with Snow Country officials at a level beyond what Kakashi had authorized. Either the princess had remarkable intelligence networks, or someone in Konoha was leaking classified information. The monorail decelerated smoothly as it approached the outskirts of Yukigakure, a city that bore little resemblance to the snow-covered village Naruto vaguely remembered from his first mission here. Gleaming towers of glass and chakra-infused alloys rose like crystalline formations against the mountainous backdrop. Elevated walkways connected major buildings, their transparent surfaces occasionally pulsing with pale blue light as climate control systems adjusted to maintain optimal temperatures. Impressive, Mitsuki murmured, her Byakugan allowing her to perceive the intricate chakra circuits embedded throughout the city's infrastructure. They've integrated chakra pathways directly into their architectural framework. The entire city functions as a single, massive chakra regulation system. The princess calls it living architecture, Tanaka explained with evident pride. Buildings that OND to environmental changes and population needs automatically. The technology has reduced our energy consumption by 73% while allowing us to expand into previously uninhabitable regions. The monorail glided into an enclosed station where the temperature instantly rose to a comfortable level. As the doors whispered open, Naruto felt a subtle change in the air, a pressure differ. That had nothing to do with climate control systems and everything to do with the dimensional instabilities plaguing him. He shot a questioning glance at Mitsuki. 3 new microrifts just formed, she confirmed quietly. Something about this location is triggering increased activity. Before Naruto could respond, a small delegation approached from across the platform. Leading them was a severe-looking man in a lab coat. His salt and pepper hair cropped close to his skull and his eyes sharp behind rimless spectacles. Dr. Takimoto, Chief Research Officer for the Dimensional Research Institute. He introduced himself with a curt bow. Princess Koyuki has instructed me to escort you directly to the facility. We've prepared the specialized laboratory according to the specifications sent by your Hokage. Thank you for accommodating us on such short notice, Naruto replied with formal politeness, automatically falling back on diplomatic training from his Anbu days. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, and this is Mitsuki Hyuga, our dimensional stability specialist. Dr. Takimoto's gaze lingered on Mitsuki's activated Byakugan with undisguised scientific interest. A specialized variation of the Hyuga Kekkei Genkei, I understand. Your ability to perceive dimensional anomalies will be invaluable to our research. If you would both follow me, we have transport waiting. Rather than leading them to street level, drive. Takimoto guided them deeper into the station, through a security checkpoint where advanced scanning equipment analyzed their chakra signatures, and finally to what appeared to be a private monorail platform. A sleek, cylindrical vehicle hovered slightly above its track, emitting a subtle hum that Naruto felt more than heard. Our maglev shuttle, drive. Takimoto explained, gesturing them aboard. It utilizes repulsive chakra fields to achieve frictionless movement. We'll reach the institute in approximately 6 minutes. Inside, the shuttle was minimalist yet comfortable, with contoured seating and information displays embedded in transparent panels. As they settled in, Naruto noticed the Anbu operative positioning himself near the exit, close enough to intervene if necessary, but far enough away to give the impression of privacy. The shuttle accelerated with remarkable smoothness, the city outside blurring as they reached speeds that would have been impossible with conventional transportation. Through the transparent ceiling, Naruto glimpsed massive structures on the outskirts of the city, dome-shaped facilities surrounded by chakra barrier fields visible even to normal eyes. The Institute Complex, drive. Takimoto noted, following Naruto's gaze. 7 dedicated research facilities, each focusing on a different aspect of chakra technology integration. The Dimensional Research Institute is the newest and, frankly, the most theoretical of our divisions. Theoretical until recently, Mitsuki observed. I imagine our arrival changes that assessment considerably. A thin smile crossed the scientist's face. Indeed, Princess Koyuki has maintained interest in dimensional theory since encountering the possibility of parallel worlds during her early reign. However, until receiving Konoha's reports about Mr. Uzumaki's condition, our research remained largely hypothetical. Now, we have a living subject manifesting precisely the phenomena we've only speculated about. Something in his tone made Naruto uneasy, the clinical detachment with which he said, living subject, rather than person. He'd encountered that perspective before, usually from T-Hos who had viewed him primarily as a Jinchuriki rather than as Naruto Uzumaki. I should clarify something, Doctor, Naruto said, his voice pleasant but firm. I've agreed to participate in your research to understand what's happening to me and how to control it. I'm not offering myself as an experimental subject for unrelated studies. If Dr. Takimoto was offended by the boundary setting, he didn't show it. Of course, the princess was quite explicit about the parameters of our collaboration. Our primary goal is stabilization of your condition, with any additional scientific insights being secondary benefits. The shuttle decelerated as it approached the largest of the domed facilities, gliding into an underground bay where several white-coated researchers awaited their arrival. Naruto felt another surge of dimensional activity as they disembarked, stronger this time, accompanied by a momentary double vision effect that made him stumble slightly. Naruto, Mitsuki was at his side instantly, her voice low with concern. I'm seeing overlaps, he explained, blinking rapidly as his vision struggled to resolve. Like two versions of everything, slightly out of alignment. Dr. Takimoto's interest sharpened visibly. Fascinating. That aligns with our theoretical models of dimensional boundary perception. Your brain is likely processing visual information from two adjacent dimensional planes simultaneously. It's happening more frequently, Mitsuki informed him. And the rifts are increasing in both size and duration. Then we should proceed directly to the primary laboratory, drive. Takimoto decided, gesturing toward an elevator platform. Princess Koyuki is waiting there with our specialized equipment. As they descended deeper into the facility, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Not by the obvious security cameras or the curious researchers, but by something outside normal perception. Something peering through the thinning walls between dimensions. Something patient and hungry. The primary laboratory of the Dimensional Research Institute resembled a massive geodesic sphere, its interior walls composed of interlocking hexagonal panels that pulsed with soft blue light. At the center stood a raised platform surrounded by concentric rings of equipment, some recognizable as advanced diagnostic tools, others entirely alien in design and purpose. Researchers moved with practiced efficiency between workstations, their white lab coats contrasting sharply with the blue-tinted environment. And there, directing operations from a holographic interface, stood Princess Koyuki Kazuhana. The years had changed her, Naruto noted as they approached. The young actress-turned reluctant ruler had transformed into a confident sovereign whose regal bearing came naturally now rather than from theatrical training. Her long black hair was streaked with a single band of silver at the temple, pulled back in an elegant knot that emphasized her high cheekbones and clear gray eyes. She wore a fitted research uniform rather than royal attire, the subtle crown insignia on her collar the only indication of her status. Naruto Uzumaki, she greeted him. Her formal tone softened by genuine warmth as she stepped away from the interface. It's been too long. Though I admit, I never expected our reunion would involve quite such extraordinary circumstances. Princess Koyuki, Naruto replied with a respectful bow. Thank you for agreeing to help. This isn't exactly something Konoha's medical division is equipped to handle. Koyuki is sufficient when we're not at state functions. She corrected with a hint of her old directness. And helping you is the least I can do, considering you once saved both my life and my country. Her gaze shifted to Mitsuki, assessing the Hyuga with scientific precision. You must be the dimensional perception specialist. Your modified Byakugan is already legendary among our sensor technology researchers. Mitsuki bowed formally. Your reputation precedes you as well, Princess. Your papers on quantum chakra dynamics have revolutionized our understanding of how spiritual and physical energies interact. A reader of scientific journals. Koyuki noted with approval. Excellent. That will make explanations more efficient. She turned back to Naruto. We've prepared a comprehensive testing protocol based on the data Konoha provided. With your permission, I'd like to begin with a full dimensional resonance scan. Whatever you think will help, Naruto agreed, though uncertainty crept into his voice. Though I should warn you, these powers have been growing more unpredictable. During the journey here, I experienced several episodes where reality seemed to slip. That's precisely why we need to work quickly, Koyuki responded, gesturing toward the central platform. Our sensors have detected unusual quantum fluctuations throughout the region since your arrival. The effect appears to be intensifying. As Naruto stepped onto the platform, Mitsuki positioned herself at one of the monitoring stations where her Byakugan could provide complementary data to the technological sensors. The Anbu operative maintained his position near the laboratory entrance, watchful but unobtrusive. This scanning array was originally designed to detect naturally occurring dimensional anomalies in our northern territories. Koyuki explained as technicians adjusted equipment around Naruto. We've modified it to provide a comprehensive analysis of your unique energy signatures without triggering further instabilities. The platform beneath Naruto hummed softly as it activated, and a cylindrical field of translucent energy rose to encase him. Unlike chakra barriers he'd encountered before, this one felt oddly permeable, more like standing in a gentle current than behind a solid wall. The field is a passive observer, Koyuki continued, monitoring readings from a nearby console. It won't interact with your energies. Merely record their patterns and fluctuations. Try to remain as calm and still as possible during the initial baseline capture. Naruto closed his eyes and focused on his breathing, employing meditation techniques he'd learned during sage training. Inside his body, the three distinct energy systems continued their uneasy coexistence, Kaguya's celestial chakra flowing through his upper pathways, the Shinigami's spectral essence concentrating around his heart, and Arceus's creation energy circulating through his lower chakra gates. Remarkable, Koyuki murmured as data streamed across her display. The energy signatures are completely distinct yet somehow interconnected. It's as if three separate power systems are using your chakra network as shared infrastructure, while maintaining their individual properties. That aligns with my observations, Mitsuki confirmed from her station. The energies repel each other when channeled simultaneously but appear to be establishing tentative connections at specific junction points. Can you isolate the resonance frequencies of each energy type? Dr. Takimoto asked, studying a three-dimensional model of Naruto's chakra system that hovered above his workstation. Already processing, Koyuki replied, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The celestial chakra operates at a significantly higher frequency than standard human chakra, almost double the oscillation rate. The spectral essence doesn't register on conventional frequency measurements, it appears to exist partially outside normal space-time. And the creation energy. She paused, frowning at the readings. The creation energy's frequency is in constant flux, cycling through 18 distinct patterns in rapid succession. The plates, Naruto said suddenly, opening his eyes. Arceus mentioned 18 plates in my vision, different aspects of creation power. Koyuki's eyes sharpened with interest. Your vision mentioned specific components to this power. That could be crucial information. Before Naruto could elaborate, an alarm sounded from Mitsuki's monitoring station. Dimensional stability is decreasing rapidly, she reported, her Byakugan focusing intensely on Naruto. The microrifts are coalescing into larger breaches. Current count: 23 rifts larger than 1 mm and expanding. I feel them, Naruto confirmed, wincing as pinpricks of pain spread across his skin, like holes being punched through me in reality simultaneously. Koyuki moved swiftly to a different console, activating additional systems with practiced efficiency. Initiating dimensional stabilization field. Dr. Takimoto, prepare the resonance dampeners. A second energy field materialized outside the first, this one deeper blue and visibly more substantial. As it engaged, Naruto felt immediate relief, the painful sensation of reality tearing around him temporarily subsiding. Better? Koyuki asked, watching him closely. Much, Naruto nodded. What did you do? The stabilization field creates a localized pocket of reinforced space-time, she explained, essentially wrapping your immediate vicinity in multiple layers of solidified reality. It's not a permanent solution, but it should provide temporary relief while we analyze the data. The rifts are stabilizing but not closing, Mitsuki observed. They appear to be entering a dormant state rather than healing completely. As expected, Koyuki nodded. We can't eliminate the rifts without addressing their source. But this gives us time to develop a more comprehensive approach. She turned to Naruto with clinical precision. I need you to describe, in detail, everything you experienced during your initial awakening and subsequent episodes. Every sensation, vision, and energy fluctuation, no matter how insignificant it might seem. For the next hour, Naruto recounted his experiences while Koyuki and her team cross-referenced his account with their sensor data. He described the fatal wound that should have killed him, the void between life and death where he'd encountered the three entities, and the subsequent changes to his perception and abilities. With each new detail, the researchers added data points to their evolving model of his condition. The pattern is becoming clearer, Koyuki eventually declared, studying a complex holograph representation hovering above the central platform. What you're experiencing isn't simply the awakening of dormant abilities or the acquisition of new powers. It's a fundamental transformation of your existence on a quantum level. Meaning, Naruto prompted when she paused in thought. You're becoming a nexus point between dimensions, she stated matter-of-factly. A living bridge connecting multiple realities. The three power sources you've inherited, celestial, spiritual, and creative, are actually anchors to three distinct dimensional frameworks. As they awaken within you, they're creating pathways between realities that normally never intersect. That would explain the rifts, Mitsuki suggested. Tears in the fabric of space-time as these connections form without proper structure or control. Precisely. Koyuki agreed. In essence, Naruto's body is becoming a dimensional crossroads before he's learned how to regulate the traffic. So how do I learn? Naruto asked, the practical question cutting through the scientific theorizing. How do I stop being a walking dimensional disaster waiting to happen? Koyuki's expression became more animated, a spark of scientific excitement breaking through her professional demeanor. That's where our research might offer a solution. We've been developing technology to stabilize naturally occurring dimensional weak points in our northern territories. With modifications, similar principles could help you establish conscious control over these processes. She manipulated the holographic display, bringing forward schematics for a device comprised of concentric rings and crystalline components. This prototype was designed to reinforce reality in areas where dimensional boundaries naturally thin. A personalized version could help you regulate the flow of energies until you develop natural control. A technological crutch, drive. Takimoto commented, studying the design. Temporary, but potentially effective. How soon could such a device be ready? Mitsuki asked, her pragmatic tone conveying the urgency of their situation. The core components already exist, Koyuki replied. Adapting them to Naruto's specific frequencies would require approximately 48 hours of calibration and testing. Naruto considered the proposal, instinctively wary of technological solutions to what felt like an inherently spiritual problem. Yet the relief provided by the stabilization field was undeniable, the first respite he'd experienced from the constant pressure of dimensional instability in weeks. If it buys us time to find a permanent solution, I'm willing to try, he decided. But I want to understand how it works. This isn't just about containing the problem, I need to learn to control these abilities. Agreed, Koyuki nodded. Education alongside stabilization. In fact, she hesitated, then continued with greater conviction. There's another avenue we should explore simultaneously. Something I've been researching privately that might be relevant to your condition. Dr. Takimoto's expression sharpened with surprise. Princess, you can't mean the Convergence Project. That research is still entirely theoretical. Theory meets practice when the appropriate subject arrives, Koyuki countered, her tone making it clear the decision wasn't open for debate. Prepare Laboratory 7 for activation. Full clearance protocols. Limited personnel. The scientist looked as though he wanted to object further but merely bowed instead. As you wish, Princess. After he departed, Koyuki returned her attention to Naruto and Mitsuki. The Convergence Project is my personal research initiative, exploring the possibility of conscious travel between parallel dimensions. Until now, it remained theoretical, due to the absence of a viable transition mechanism. Your condition, Naruto, represents exactly the mechanism we've been unable to create artificially. You want to use Naruto as a dimensional gateway? Mitsuki asked, unable to keep disapproval from her voice. His condition is already unstable. Attempting controlled dimensional travel could exacerbate the rifts beyond containment. Or it could help him understand and master his emerging abilities, Koyuki countered evenly. Sometimes the path to control isn't through suppression but through guided expression. She turned to Naruto, her expression softening slightly. The choice is yours. The stabilization device will proceed regardless. You need immediate relief from the dimensional stress. But the convergence research represents a possible path to mastery rather than mere management. Naruto considered the options, acutely aware of Mitsuki's concern and Koyuki's scientific interest, both pulling in different directions. Yet something about the Convergence Project resonated with his instincts, a sense that these powers weren't meant to be contained but channeled. I want to see this Laboratory 7, he decided. After that, I'll make my decision. Koyuki nodded, satisfaction briefly visible in her expression before professional composure returned. Very well, we should move quickly. The stabilization field is effective but consumes enormous energy. It can't be maintained indefinitely. As they prepared to leave the primary laboratory, Naruto noticed Mitsuki deactivating her Byakugan for the first time since their arrival, a sign of her fatigue after hours of continuous observation. The brief flicker of discomfort that crossed her face didn't escape his attention. "You should rest," he told her quietly as they followed Koyuki toward the elevator platform. "Maintaining the Byakugan that long can cause damage. My condition is manageable," she replied stiffly, though the tension around her eyes suggested otherwise. "The mutation that allows me to perceive dimensional anomalies also reduces the chakra drain of sustained activation." "That doesn't mean it's without cost," Naruto persisted. "And we need you at full capacity. Take an hour to recover while I tour this secret laboratory. You can catch up afterward." Mitsuki hesitated, clearly torn between her duty to monitor him constantly and the practical necessity of conserving her strength. "The Anbu operative will remain with you, within visual range at all times," Naruto confirmed. "And I promise not to make any decisions about the Convergence CE project until you've had a chance to assess it." After a moment's consideration, she nodded reluctantly. 1 hour. The princess can arrange quarters where I can properly meditate and restore my chakra reserves." "Already done," Koyuki interjected, having overheard their conversation. "Guest quarters adjacent to Laboratory 7 have been prepared for both of you. Miss Hyuga can rest there while we continue our discussion." As they reached the elevator platform, Naruto felt another ripple of dimensional instability, weaker than before but still disconcerting. The stabilization field had bought them time. But how much remained uncertain. Whatever decisions lay ahead, they would need to be made quickly. Laboratory 7 occupied the lowest level of the research complex, accessible only through a dedicated elevator requiring Koyuki's personal biometric authorization. Unlike the open, brightly lit primary laboratory, this facility was intimate and subdued, a circular chamber with walls of polished black stone veined with luminescent blue crystal. "Chakra-conductive obsidian," Koyuki explained as she led Naruto into the space. "Mined from the northern mountains where we first discovered dimensional thin spots. The material naturally resonates with transition energies." At the chamber's center stood a platform similar to the one Naruto had occupied during the scanning process, but more elaborate in design. Concentric rings of an unknown silvery metal surrounded a circular dais inlaid with complex seal patterns that combined familiar shinobi techniques with completely foreign symbols. "The Convergence Nexus," Koyuki said, running her hand reverently along one of the metal rings. 5 years of research and development, building on technologies discovered in my hers hidden archives and refined through my own studies." "What exactly does it do?" Naruto asked, studying the unfamiliar symbols with growing curiosity. Some resembled the markings that had appeared on his skin when he channeled Arceus's creation energy. "In theory, it creates a stable transitional space between dimensions," Koyuki explained, activating a control panel that caused the platform to emit a soft, pulsing glow. "A pocket reality where the physical laws of multiple dimensions can coexist without conflict, allowing controlled passage from one to another." She gestured toward the walls, where several monitoring stations displayed complex data streams. "We've identified 7 parallel dimensions with sufficient proximity to our own to potentially allow transition. Until now, we lacked a viable method to establish the initial connection. And you think I can provide that connection," Naruto surmised. "Because I'm already becoming a dimensional crossroads, as you put it." "Exactly." Koyuki's scientific detachment briefly gave way to genuine excitement. "The energies manifesting within you are creating natural bridges between realities. The Convergence Nexus could help stabilize those bridges, allowing controlled exploration rather than random tears in the fabric of space-time." Naruto circled the platform slowly, his enhanced senses detecting subtle energy patterns flowing through the metal rings. "There's something familiar about this design. It reminds me of the crystal chamber from my vision, where I saw Kaguya, the Shinigami, and Arceus." "That's remarkable," Koyuki said, her interest sharpening. "The basic configuration came from ancient schematics in my father's archives. He believed they originated with an advanced civilization that predated the Shinobi era, possibly even the Otsutsuki clan." She hesitated, then added more quietly, "There's something I haven't shared with the research team. Something personal that influenced my interest in dimensional research." Naruto turned to face her, noting the subtle shift in her demeanor, a glimpse of the woman beneath the scientist and ruler. "What is it?" "During the final confrontation with my uncle years ago, When the ice began to melt and spring returned to our land, I experienced a vision. Koyuki moved to a secured panel on the wall, pressing her palm against a scanner that revealed a hidden compartment. From within, she withdrew a small crystalline object that glowed with soft internal light. I saw my father standing before me in a place that wasn't quite our world, a realm between realities. He gave me this. She held up the crystal. He called it a fragment of elsewhere, and said that understanding its origins would reveal our country's true purpose. The crystal pulsed as Koyuki brought it closer to Naruto, its light synchronizing with his heartbeat. Years of analysis revealed it contains quantum patterns that don't conform to our dimensional constants. It's literally a piece of another reality, somehow stabilized to exist within our own. And the Convergence Project grew from studying this fragment, Naruto guessed, feeling strangely drawn to the crystal. Yes, my father believed our land wasn't always covered in snow, that it once served as a meeting point between worlds before some ancient catastrophe sealed the pathways and changed our climate as a side effect. Koyuki carefully returned the crystal to its compartment. If he was right, then the dimensional thin spots we've discovered might be remnants of those original pathways. And Ryopenin. Those pathways might restore your land completely, Naruto concluded, understanding her personal stake in the research beyond scientific curiosity. That was my initial hope, Koyuki admitted. But as the research progressed, I realized the implications extended far beyond our climate. Controlled access to parallel dimensions could revolutionize everything from resource management to knowledge exchange. The potential benefits are incalculable. So are the potential risks, came Mitsuki's voice from the laboratory entrance. She stood beside the Anbu operative, her Byakugan active again despite Naruto's earlier concerns. Opening pathways between dimensions could allow threats from other realities to enter our own. Mitsuki, Naruto acknowledged, surprised by her early return. I thought you were resting. I was, she confirmed, approaching the platform with evident caution. Until I perceived a significant dimensional disturbance centered on this location. The rifts surrounding you have begun to align with the energy signature of this device. Koyuki turned to a nearby monitoring station, checking the readings with a frown. She's right. The Nexus is responding to your presence, Naruto. Even in its dormant state, it's establishing resonance with your energies automatically. Is that dangerous? Naruto asked, noticing that the platform's glow had intensified since his arrival. Not inherently, Koyuki assured him, though her expression remained concerned. But it suggests your connection to dimensional energies is stronger than anticipated. The Nexus was designed to require deliberate activation, not to respond spontaneously. Mitsuki moved closer to Naruto, her Byakugan scrutinizing the interaction between his energy field and the platform. The Celestial Sea, Hakra appears to be recognizing the symbols in the platform design, almost as if Kaguya's power recognizes technology from its origin, Naruto finished, suddenly understanding. You said His designs might be connected to the Otsutsuki. What if they actually created the original pathways between dimensions? A plausible hypothesis, Koyuki agreed, rapidly adjusting settings on the sea. Ontral panel as the platform's resonance continued to increase. The Otsutsuki are known to have traveled between worlds, harvesting chakra from multiple realities. They would have required stable transition methods. The metal rings surrounding the platform began to rotate slowly, responding to some unseen mechanism despite Koyuki having initiated no activation sequence. The blue crystal veins in the walls pulsed in rhythmic patterns, brightening with each rotation. Princess, the system is initiating a connection sequence, reported a technician from one of the monitoring stations. But we haven't engaged the primary protocols. Quote, it's responding to him, Koyuki realized, moving quickly to another console. Naruto's presence is triggering automatic recognition protocols we didn't know existed. The system sees him as an authorized user. Shut it down, Mitsuki urged, placing herself protectively between Naruto and the increasingly active platform. We don't know what dimensional C ordinates its targeting or what might come through. Attempting system override, Koyuki responded, her fingers flying across multiple interfaces. But the original programming is superseding our control parameters. It's like the device has its own protocol for responding to someone with Otsutsuki energy. Naruto felt a familiar sensation building within him, the celestial chakra responding to the platform's call, flowing more strongly through his upper pathways. The ripple pattern of his transformed eyes activated spontaneously, revealing layers of energy and information invisible to normal perception. "I can see how it works," he said, his voice overlaid with harmonic tones as Kaguya's power influenced his speech. "The rings create a spiral compression of space-time, folding dimensional boundaries until they touch at precise coordinates. The platform itself serves as an anchor point, preventing reality collapse during transition." "Naruto." Mitsuki's voice held concern as she noted the changes in his chakra signature. "Are you in control?" "Partially," he admitted, watching the spinning rings with fascination. "Kaguya's knowledge is flowing through me, fragments of understanding about how her clan traveled between dimensions. This technology is similar but more refined. Can you stop the activation sequence?" Koyuki asked, abandoning her futile override attempts. "The system won't respond to our commands anymore." Naruto stepped toward the platform, drawn by instincts he couldn't entirely explain. "I don't think we should stop it. Something important is happening, something necessary." "Based on what evidence?" Mitsuki demanded, not moving from her protective position. "This could be a trap, or you could be influenced by the celestial chakra without realizing it." Her concern penetrated Naruto's fascination enough to give him pause. She was right. He couldn't be certain whether these instincts were his own or Kaguya's lingering influence. Yet something deeper than conscious thought told him this moment was pivotal to understanding his condition. "Trust me," he said to Mitsuki, meeting her Byakugan gaze directly. "If this goes wrong, you have my permission to shut it down however necessary. But I need to see where this leads." Before she could respond, alarms blared throughout the laboratory. Red warning lights flashed as the rotation of the platform rings accelerated dramatically. "Dimensional breach detected in sectors 3 and 7. Shouted a technician, panic evident in his voice. "Multiple entry points forming." "That's not the nexus," Koyuki realized. Studying the incoming data, something else is creating rifts throughout the facility. Mitsuki expanded her Byakugan's range, scanning beyond the laboratory. Confirmed. Large scale dimensional breaches are forming at multiple points in the research complex. They don't match Naruto's energy signature. A chill ran down Naruto's spine as understanding dawned. "It's found us. The boundary creature from the forest. It's tracked me here." As if confirming his words, a violent tremor shook the facility. Overhead lights flickered as power fluctuated throughout the systems. Anbu operative moved to secure the laboratory entrance, signaling to unseen colleagues through his communication device. "What boundary creature?" Koyuki demanded, her composure slipping slightly in the face of this unexpected threat. "The entity that nearly killed me," Naruto explained grimly. "It exists partially between dimensions, feeding on energies like those I'm manifesting." Mitsuki Bell. "It's been using my rifts to track me across realities. And now it's found you," Koyuki concluded, her scientific mind rapidly assessing implications. "But why multiple breach points rather than a direct approach?" "Tactical dispersion," the Anbu operative suggested, breaking his silence for the first time. "It's creating distractions to divide our defensive resources." Another, stronger tremor rocked the laboratory. The crystal veins in the walls flared brightly before several cracked with sharp reports like breaking glass. "Princess," a security officer's voice came through the communication system. "Unknown entities have breached the primary laboratory. Research staff are being evacuated, but the creatures are targeting the dimensional stabilization field generators. They trying to disable the technology suppressing Naruto's rifts," Mitsuki realized. "If they succeed, I'll become an uncontrolled gateway," Naruto finished, the implications chilling. "And that thing will have exactly what it wants." Koyuki made a swift decision, activating an emergency protocol on her control panel. Initiating facility lockdown. All personnel to emergency shelters. Security EAMS to convergence points Alpha and Beta. She turned to Naruto, her expression grave. "We need to complete the Nexus activation immediately. If these entities are hunting you through unstable rifts, our best defense is a controlled dimensional transition. You want to use the Nexus now." "Without testing," Mitsuki objected. "We have no idea where it might send him or if return would even be possible." It's targeting the stabilization technology, Koyuki countered urgently. Once those systems fail, Naruto's condition will deteriorate rapidly, creating exactly the uncontrolled gateway you fear. The Nexus offers our only chance at directed transition rather than chaotic collapse. A third tremor, more violent than the previous two, sent equipment crashing to the floor. The laboratory doors sealed automatically as emergency protocols engaged, temporarily trapping them inside. The Nexus is reaching critical resonance, reported a technician, clinging to his station as the room shook. Dimensional membrane thinning to transition threshold in 47 seconds. Naruto made his decision, stepping onto the platform despite Mitsuki's attempt to block him. She's right. If that creature disables the stabilization field, we'll be facing something much worse than an untested transition device. Then I'm coming with you, Mitsuki declared, stepping onto the platform beside him. My ability to perceive dimensional anomalies may be crucial for navigation or return. As am I, Koyuki added, joining them after entering final commands into the control system. This technology is my creation. I understand its operation better than anyone. If adjustments are needed on the other side, you'll need my expertise. The Anbu operative moved to join them, but Naruto shook his head. No, Konoha needs to know what's happening. Get back and report to the Hokage. Tell him about the boundary creature and where we've gone. My mission is to protect you, the Anbu countered. And mine is to protect Konoha. Naruto replied firmly, which means ensuring the village has critical intelligence about a dimensional threat. That's an order, operative. After a moment's hesitation, the Anbu nodded once and stepped back from the platform. The rings surrounding them spun faster, creating a visual blur as they approached impossible speeds. The symbols inlaid in the platform beneath their feet began to glow with intense blue-white light, matching the pulsing patterns in Naruto's transformed eyes. Transition imminent, called out the technician. Dimensional membrane integrity at minimal threshold. Outside the laboratory, they heard the unmistakable sounds of combat, shouted orders, jutsu activations, and inhuman screeching that raised the hairs on Naruto's neck. The boundary creature's servants had breached inner security. What should we expect? Naruto asked Koyuki as the light from the platform enveloped them in a brilliant cocoon. Theoretically, a momentary sensat ion of displacement followed by rematerialization in the target dimension, she replied, her scientific precision holding despite the chaotic circumstances. Though without controlled coordinates, we could emerge anywhere, Mitsuki concluded, positioning herself protectively near Naruto as the light intensified to blinding levels. The laboratory around them began to fade, its solid structure becoming translucent as reality itself thinned to gossamer. Through this dimensional veil, Naruto caught a glimpse of something massive moving toward them, a writhing darkness that seemed to consume light rather than merely block it. The boundary creature had arrived in person, drawn by the immense energy of the Nexus activation. It's coming through, Naruto warned, instinctively channeling Chakra to his hands in preparation for combat. Too late, Koyuki responded, a note of triumph in her voice as the final transition sequence engaged. We're already gone. Reality shattered around them like fragile glass. Fragments of the laboratory falling away to reveal a swirling vortex of prismatic energy. Naruto felt his body simultaneously compress and expand, existing in multiple states across multiple dimensions before resolving into coherent form again. The last thing he saw before the transition completed was the boundary creature's amorphous form lunging toward the space they had occupied. Its otherworldly shriek of rage cut off as the dimensional pathway collapsed behind them. Then there was only the sensation of falling through endless light. Consciousness returned to Naruto in fragments, disconnected sensations gradually coalescing into coherent awareness. First came touch, the cool smoothness of polished stone beneath his body. Then sound, a rhythmic humming that seemed to emanate from the air itself. Finally sight, as he opened his eyes to an environment unlike anything he had ever encountered. They had emerged in what appeared to be a vast atrium constructed from impossible architecture, soaring columns that branched like crystalline trees supporting a ceiling that rippled with auroral light. The floor beneath him was inlaid with intricate patterns that shifted subtly when viewed from different angles, creating an impression of perpetual motion despite being solid matter. Mitsuki, Koyuki, Naruto called out, pushing himself to a sitting position as he searched for his companions. Here, came Mitsuki's voice from nearby. She knelt several meters away, her Byakugan active as she scanned their surroundings. Despite the dimensional transition, she appeared physically unharmed, though her expression betrayed disorientation. The princess is unconscious but stable, she reported, gesturing to where Koyuki lay nearby. Her vital signs are normal, but the transition appears to have affected her more severely than us. Any idea where we are? Naruto asked, rising to his feet and moving to check on Koyuki personally. Not precisely, Mitsuki admitted, her Byakugan taking in their environment with scientific precision. This place exists outside conventional dimensional parameters. It's neither our reality nor another distinct dimension, something between, a nexus point where multiple realities intersect. Naruto gently examined Koyuki, confirming Mitsuki's assessment of her condition. The princess's breathing was regular, her pulse strong, suggesting simple unconsciousness rather than injury. As he checked her for other signs of trauma, Koyuki's eyelids fluttered open. Did it work? She asked immediately, her scientist's curiosity evident even through her disorientation. In a manner of speaking, Naruto replied, helping her sit up. We're definitely not in the laboratory anymore. Koyuki took in their surroundings with wide eyes, professional composure momentarily giving way to wonder. Extraordinary. This architecture, it shouldn't be possible according to our physical laws. I don't think our physical laws apply here, Mitsuki observed, deactivating her Byakugan with a wince of discomfort. This place exists at a dimensional crossroads. My perception suggests at least 7 distinct realities converging on this location. Koyuki rose unsteadily to her feet with Naruto's assistance, her scientific mind already analyzing their situation despite the lingering effects of transition. The nexus worked, but without proper coordinate programming. It defaulted to the most natural convergence point in the dimensional array, this intersection. Is that good or bad? Naruto asked, maintaining a supportive grip on her arm until she regained her balance. Potentially both, Koyuki answered, her strength returning as she moved carefully around the immediate area. This appears to be a designed space, deliberately constructed at a dimensional weak point to facilitate transition. That suggests intelligence and purpose, possibly even civilization. More immediately concerning, Mitsuki interjected, is whether the boundary creature can follow us here. If this is a natural convergence point for multiple dimensions, it might already know about this place, Naruto finished grimly. Which means we need to understand where we are and how to navigate between dimensions before it catches up. Koyuki approached one of the crystalline columns, examining its structure with professional interest. These aren't merely decorative, they appear to be functional components in a massive system, conduits for energy flowing between dimensional planes. She traced her fingers along patterns etched into the column's surface, symbols similar to those on the Nexus platform but more elaborate. Some of these match the ancient writing from my father's archives. If I'm interpreting them correctly, this is some kind of waystation. A neutral space for travelers moving between worlds. Like an interdimensional airport, Naruto suggested, surveying the vast atrium with new understanding. More like an embassy or trading post. Koyuki corrected, moving to examine another column. A place where representatives from different realities could meet without the physical laws of any single dimension taking precedence. Mitsuki, who had been systematically exploring their surroundings, called from across the atrium. There are doorways here, 7 of them arranged in a perfect circle. Naruto and Koyuki joined her, finding themselves before a ring of arched portals set into the far wall of the atrium. Each doorway was framed in different material, one in what appeared to be ordinary stone, another in gleaming metal, a third in living wood, and so on through various substances including one that seemed to be pure energy. Transitions to different dimensions, Koyuki breathed, excitement overcoming caution as she examined the nearest portal, each calibrated to the physical properties of its target reality. But which leads where? Naruto wondered, studying the symbols inscribed above each archway. None resembled writing systems he recognized, yet something about them tugged at his awareness, as if part of him understood their meaning on some level beyond conscious thought. The stone doorway, he said suddenly, certainty filling him as Kaguya's celestial chakra stirred within his system. That one leads back to our world, or at least, a version of it. How can you be sure? Mitsuki asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected the answer. Kaguya's knowledge, Naruto explained, approaching the stone archway. Fragments of memory about how the Otsutsuki navigated between dimensions. They used places like this, naturally occurring dimensional crossroads that they modified with their technology. Koyuki followed him, studying the stone portal with intense focus. Can you activate it? Can we return home through this transition point? Before Naruto could answer, a new sensation washed over him, a pressure change in the environment accompanied by a subtle but distinct alteration in the atrium's ambient light. The auroral patterns on the ceiling shifted from peaceful blues and greens to agitated purples and reds. Something's coming, Mitsuki warned, reactivate. In her Byakugan despite the obvious strain it caused her. Multiple dimensional disturbances forming throughout the atrium. The boundary creature, Naruto asked, automatically moving into a defensive position that placed himself between his companions and the center of the vast space. No, Mitsuki replied, her enhanced vision tracking invisible energies. Different signature entirely. These are controlled openings. Deliberate and precise. As if responding to her assessment, the air in the center of the atrium shimmered and parted, creating an oval opening approximately 2 meters high. Through this portal stepped a figure that caused all three of them to tense in preparation for potential conflict. The newcomer appeared humanoid but with distinct differences that marked them as something other. Tall and willowy, with skin that shimmered between pale lavender and deep indigo depending on how light struck it, the being moved with liquid grace across the atrium floor. Its face bore features reminiscent of human arrangement but with eyes too large and entirely silver, lacking pupils or sclera. Instead of hair, delicate crystalline structures emerged from its scalp, capturing and refracting light in hypnotic patterns. Most notably, the being wore what appeared to be an academic robe covered in intricate embroidery depicting mathematical equations and dimensional diagrams. It approached with measured steps, stopping a respectful distance away before speaking in a melodious voice that seemed to bypass normal auditory processing and manifest directly in their minds. Travelers, you are recognized and welcome to the Convergence Nexus. I am Archival Designate Amara Valisa, Dimensional Cartographer and Transition Specialist. Your arrival has activated long-dormant protocols in the station's monitoring systems. The being, Amara, tilted her head slightly, silver eyes studying them with evident curiosity. Most unusual, you appear to have originated from dimensional classification E7392. Yet one among you carries energy signatures from multiple prime reality streams. Fascinating. Naruto exchanged quick glances with his companions before stepping forward. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. These are my colleagues, Princess Koyuki Kazuhana and Mitsuki Hyuga. We've arrived here accidentally while escaping a threat in our home dimension. The boundary hunter, Amara nodded, surprising them with her immediate understanding. Yes, we have detected its increased activity across several dimensional sectors. Its aggression toward Nexus potentials has been documented by the Archival Collective. Nexus potentials? Koyuki inquired, scientific curiosity evident in her tone despite the unusual circumstances. Beings with the capacity to serve as living dimensional anchors, Amara explained. Gesturing toward Naruto, like your companion, who carries the convergent energies of multiple prime realities within his biological matrix. Such individuals are extremely perhaps one in a trillion sentient entities possesses the necessary quantum composition. Her silver eyes focused more intently on Naruto. You are early in your awakening cycle. The convergence of energies has begun but not stabilized. This explains the boundary hunter's interest. Your transitional state makes you both vulnerable and valuable. Valuable how? Mitsuki asked, her protective eye. NSTINCTS evident in her positioning close to Naruto. A fully realized Nexus being can create stable pathways between dimensions without technological assistance, Amara explained. They become living bridges, capable of transporting themselves and others across reality boundaries that would otherwise be impermeable. The boundary hunter seeks to consume such potential before it can fully manifest, absorbing the convergent energies to enhance its own interdimensional capabilities. That's why it attacked me, Naruto realized. It recognized what I was becoming before I did. Indeed, Amara confirmed. The hunter perceives awakening nexus potentials across vast distances, drawn to the unique energy signature of converging dimensional forces. It has eliminated 17 potential nexus beings in the past 2 standard chronological cycles. The casual mention of other victims sent a chill through Naruto. There were others like me. People with these same powers awakening. Similar but not identical, Amara clarified. Each nexus potential manifests a unique combination of dimensional energies based on their origin reality and personal quantum composition. Your particular convergence, she paused. Silver eyes widening slightly. Extraordinary. You carry the celestial, the spiritual, and the creative prime forces simultaneously. Such a combination has not been documented in over 8,000 cycles. Her attention shifted to include Koyuki and Mitsuki. And you have brought guardians with complementary capabilities. One who understands technological manipulation of dimensional boundaries. Another who can perceive reality shifts without assistance. Most fortuitous. We're not exactly guardians, Koyuki corrected. We were caught in the dimensional transition while escaping the boundary hunter. Yet your skills directly support the nexus potential's development, Amara observed. Such alignments rarely occur through random chance. The dimensional currents often draw necessary elements together when a nexus being awakens. Before any of them could respond to this philosophical assertion, the auroral patterns on the ceiling flared with sudden intensity. A deep, resonant tone echoed through the atrium, causing the crystalline columns to vibrate in sympathetic harmony. Most concerning, Amara stated, her calm demeanor shifting to alert attention. The station's boundary integrity monitors have detected multiple breaches forming in the outer dimensional shell. The hunter has tracked your transition path more quickly than anticipated. It's following us here, Naruto asked, alarmed by the implications. I thought this was a secure dimensional crossroads. The convergence nexus is designed to facilitate controlled transition, not repel determined incursion, Amara explained. Moving swiftly toward a crystalline pedestal that had risen from the floor in response to the alert. The hunter is not attempting standard transition. It is forcing multiple breaches in the station's protective boundaries, creating unstable entry points that bypass security protocols. Her long fingers danced across the crystalline surface, manipulating energy patterns that appeared in the air above the pedestal. I am initiating emergency containment measures, but they cannot hold indefinitely against targeted assault. We must relocate you to a secure dimension. On before the hunter establishes a viable entry point. Back to our world, Mitsuki suggested, automatically positioning herself to monitor the dimensional disturbances with her Byakugan. Unadvisable, Amara replied without pausing her work at the control pedestal. The hunter has already established tracking parameters for your home dimension. Returning would merely continue the pursuit under less favorable conditions. Then where? Koyuki asked, her scientific mind rapidly assessing options. We need a dimension where we can either hide effectively or find resources to counter this threat. Amara's silver eyes flickered with internal light as she processed possibilities. There exists a dimensional nexus point with established defenses against boundary incursion. A world where the barriers between realities have been artificially reinforced through a combination of technological and metaphysical means. The air above the pedestal shimmered, forming a 3-dimensional representation of what appeared to be a sprawling academic campus surrounded by spiraling towers and protective barriers. The Arcane Academy, Amara continued, a multidimensional institute dedicated to study and regulation of reality manipulation. Their specialty is precisely the type of dimensional mechanics relevant to your situation. Another resonant tone echoed through the atrium, this one higher and more urgent. Several of the crystalline columns developed fracture lines as the dimensional pressure increased. The hunter approaches optimal breach position, Amara reported, abandoning He control pedestal as its surface began to crack. We have minimal time remaining before containment failure. You must transition immediately. She led them rapidly toward one of the 7 doorways. An arch composed of what appeared to be liquid metal that flowed continuously within its solid framework. Unlike the stone arch Naruto had identified earlier, this portal radiated complex energy RNS that shifted and realigned constantly. This transition point leads to the dimensional sector containing the academy, Amara explained, placing her hands on either side of the archway. The liquid metal responded to her touch, flowing more rapidly as the portal began to activate. As a registered dimensional cartographer, I can establish temporary passage authorization. The space within the arch shimmered and shifted, revealing a swirling vortex of energy rather than a clear view of their destination. Unlike the violent, uncontrolled transition they had experienced with the Nexus platform, this portal appeared stable and directed. "Will you come with us?" Naruto asked Amara, sensing that her knowledge would be invaluable for navigating this unfamiliar dimensional landscape. "Yes," she replied without hesitation. "My primary function is to document and assist Nexus potentials. Your awakening represents a priority assignment that supersedes standard archival duties." Additionally, she glanced toward the center of the atrium where the air had begun to darken ominously. "My continued presence here would likely result in unfortunate termination once the hunter breaches containment." A violent tremor shook the entire station, sending cascades of crystalline fragments raining from the columns and ceiling. The auroral light flickered and dimmed as the station's power systems struggled against the increasing dimensional pressure. "Transition protocols complete," Amara announced as the portal stabilized into a clearly defined pathway. "Enter quickly and maintain physical contact with each other. Dimensional currents can separate travelers who aren't properly anchored." Naruto took Mitsuki's hand firmly in his right and Koyuki's in his left, ensuring neither would be lost during the transition. Together, they stepped toward the swirling portal, Amara close behind them. As they reached the threshold, a deafening shriek echoed through the atrium. The darkness at the center of the space tore open, revealing a writhing mass of amorphous matter that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Multiple appendages extended from the central mass, reaching toward them with unnatural speed. "The hunter breaches," Amara exclaimed, her normally calm voice rising with genuine alarm. "Transition now." Naruto didn't hesitate, pulling his companions forward into the swirling portal. The last thing he saw before dimensional energy enveloped them was Amara turning to face the boundary hunter, her hands raised in what appeared to be a defensive gesture as the creature's appendages reached for her. Then they were falling through dimensions once more, the convergence nexus vanishing behind them as reality reconfigured around their transitioning forms. Unlike their previous uncontrolled journey, this passage felt directed and purposeful, a planned trajectory rather than a desperate escape. As his consciousness expanded to perceive the spaces between realities, Naruto became aware of something remarkable. The three power sources within him, Kaguya's celestial chakra, the Shinigami's spiritual essence, and Arceus's creation energy, were no longer fighting against each other. Instead, they had entered a state of temporary harmony, aligned by the necessities of dimensional transition. In that moment of perfect balance, he glimpsed what he might eventually be. Not merely a vessel containing three separate powers, but a true nexus being, a living convergence point where multiple dimensional forces could coexist in stable equilibrium. The vision faded as they approached their destination, reality condensing around them once more. There was a moment of disorientation, a sensation of passing through multiple layers of protective barriers, and then solid ground beneath their feet again. They had arrived at the Arcane Academy, a world where reality itself was subject to academic study and systematic manipulation. A world where Naruto might finally learn to understand and control the powers awakening within him. And behind them, hunting across dimensions, the boundary creature continued its relentless pursuit. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, The Arcane Academy. Reality reassembled itself like shattered glass reforming in reverse. Naruto felt his body solidify as the swirling dimensional energies dissipated, leaving him standing on solid ground once more. The transition had been smoother than their first chaotic journey, yet still left him momentarily disoriented, his enhanced senses overwhelmed by unfamiliar sensory inputs from this new dimension. As his vision cleared, he found himself in a circular chamber constructed from polished blue-black stone. Concentric rings of silver script glowed softly in the floor beneath his feet, gradually fading as the dimensional portal closed behind them. Unlike the grand atrium of the Convergence Nexus, this space was clearly designed for practical functionality rather than imposing architecture, a secure arrival point rather than a ceremonial gateway. Dimensional transition complete, came Amara's melodious voice from behind him. Boundary integrity maintained at 97% efficiency. Naruto turned to find the dimensional cartographer examining a crystalline device embedded in her palm, something he hadn't noticed before their hasty escape. Her silvery eyes flickered with RNAL light as she processed information visible only to her. What about the hunter? Mitsuki asked, her Byakugan active despite obvious strain. She hadn't released her grip on Naruto's hand since they'd entered the portal. Her fingers now tight enough to betray her tension. Temporarily obstructed, Amara replied, her tone clinical yet somehow reassuring. The Academy's dimensional barriers are among the most sophisticated in the known multiverse. While not impenetrable, they will require significant time and energy for the hunter to breach, particularly since I initiated a scatter pattern transition that obscured our arrival coordinates. So we're safe for now, Koyuki surmised, finally releasing Naruto's other hand as she stepped forward to examine their surroundings with scientific curiosity. This is the Arcane Academy you mentioned. A secure transition chamber within the Academy's dimensional protection grid, Amara confirmed. Standard protocol for all incoming travelers from unregistered dimensional vectors. As if responding to her words, a section of the chamber wall shimmered and dissolved, revealing an arched doorway where none had existed before. Through this opening strode three figures who couldn't have appeared more different from one another. The first was unmistakably human, a tall woman with dark skin and close-cropped silver hair, dressed in robes of midnight blue adorned with astronomical symbols that shifted position subtly across the fabric. She carried herself with the confident authority of someone accustomed to command. Beside her walked a being that appeared to be composed primarily of living crystal, humanoid in general shape but with faceted surfaces that refracted light in hypnotic patterns. Where a human would have facial features, this entity displayed continuously shifting geometric patterns that somehow conveyed expression despite their abstract nature. The third figure defied conventional description altogether, a swirling column of luminescent vapor vaguely maintaining humanoid proportions, occasionally solidifying parts of itself into temporary appendages before dissolving back into mist. The only constant feature was a single orb of concentrated light where a head might be expected. Unauthorized dimensional transition detected, origin point Nexus Sector 7, announced the human woman, her voice carrying the precise diction of someone used to formal address. Identify yourselves and state your purpose for breaching Academy jurisdiction. Amara stepped forward, executing a fluid gesture that involved touching her forehead, heart, and then extending her hand palm upward toward the newcomers. Archival designate Amara Valisa, Dimensional Cartography Division, Classification 2 Alpha. I invoke emergency. Protocol 17 under the Multiversal Preservation Accord. The crystalline being emitted a series of musical tones that somehow translated into intelligible speech. Verification in progress. Quantum signature confirmed. Protocol acknowledgement registered. Explain the emergency. Designate Valisa, the human woman demanded, though her tone had shifted from accusatory to professionally concerned. Our sensors detected a boundary hunter manifestation at the convergence nexus shortly before your transition. Correct, Archmage Isolde, Amara replied, gesturing toward Naruto. I present Nexus Potential Naruto Uzumaki. Origin Dimension E7392, currently in early convergence phase. The boundary hunter has initiated targeted pursuit across multiple dimensional sectors. I executed Emerge, NCY transition to Academy jurisdiction in accordance with containment protocols for emerging Nexus entities. The vaporous being drifted closer to Naruto, its misty form swirling more rapidly as it conducted some form of examination. Extraordinary convergence pattern, it commented in a voice like distant wind chimes. Triple source integration with primary dimensional anchoring intact. Classification. Unprecedented. The woman, Archmage Isolde, studied Naruto with suddenly sharpened interest. A true triple convergence. Verified. Confirmed. The crystalline entity chimed. Celestial, spiritual, and creative prime energies. All active and progressing toward harmonic integration. And these others? Isolde inquired, her gaze shifting to Mitsuki and Koyuki. Dimensional transition companions, Amara explained. Both possess specialized capabilities relevant to the Nexus Potential's development. The perceptual specialist can directly observe dimensional anomalies with modified ocular abilities. The technological adapter has developed methods for stabilizing dimensional boundaries through mechanical means. Isolde considered this information, her expression revealing profession. Calculation rather than emotional response. Finally, she nodded decisively. Protocol 17 is approved. Quarantine restrictions lifted. She addressed Naruto directly for the first time. Welcome to the Arcane Academy. Nexus Potential Uzumaki. I am Archmage Isolde Ven, Director of Interdimensional Affairs and Senior Faculty for Convergent Reality Studies. She gestured to her companions. My colleagues, Professor Krystallix of Dimensional Geometry, and Perception Specialist Ether from the non-corporeal realms. The crystalline being, Professor Krystallix, produced a series of melody ouse tones that somehow conveyed formal greeting, while the vaporous entity, Ether, briefly condensed into a more distinctly humanoid shape before dissolving back to its preferred misty state. Your arrival, while unscheduled, is not entirely unexpected, Isolde continued. The Academy has recorded increasing boundary hunter activity across 17-dimensional sectors in recent cycles. Several ZUS potentials have been tracked and subsequently lost from our monitoring systems. Lost as in killed, Naruto translated grimly, remembering Amara's earlier mention of 17 eliminated Nexus beings. Correct, Isolde confirmed without emotional inflection. The hunter has become more aggressive in its pursuit of convergent energy sources. Your successful evasion thus far is statistically remarkable. Not remarkable. He's resourceful, Mitsuki interjected, her protective instincts evident in her positioning slightly in front of Naruto. And he's not just a Nexus potential, or an energy source. He's a person with a name and a life. Isolde regarded Mitsuki with mild surprise, as if not expecting such direct challenge from a dimensional traveler. After a moment, her expression softened marginally. Your loyalty is noted and appropriate, perceptual specialist. She paused expectantly. Mitsuki Hyuga, she supplied, not backing down under the Archmage's intense gaze. And I am not merely a perceptual specialist, I'm a shinobi of Konohagakure and assigned guardian to Naruto Uzumaki. As am I Princess Koyuki Kazuhana, Koyuki added, stepping forward with regal composure. That matched Isolde's authoritative presence. Sovereign ruler of the Land of Snow and director of advanced dimensional research. We did not transition here merely as companions but as allies with ECT interest in Naruto's well-being and development. The Archmage's eyebrows rose slightly at the forceful self-introductions. I see the Nexus potential has gathered formidable support already. Most auspicious. She turned to address the group collectively. The Academy acknowledges your individual identities and affiliations. However, you should understand that dimensional classification terms are not intended as reductions of personhood but as necessary taxonomic designations in multiversal navigation. Perhaps this discussion would be better continued after our guests have been properly settled. Suggested Professor Krystallix, the geometric patterns of its face reconfiguring into what somehow read as diplomatic concern. Dimensional transition without proper preparation can be taxing on biological systems. Agreed. Isolde nodded. Designate Valisa, please escort our visitors to the interdimensional residential complex. Standard adaptation protocols and orientation to follow. We will reconvene for formal assessment in 12 standard units. What's a standard unit? Naruto asked quietly as Amara led them from the transition chamber into a curving corridor beyond. Quote, approximately 1.2 of your hours, Amara replied. The Academy maintains a standardized temporal measurement system to accommodate students and faculty from dimensions with divergent time flow rates. The corridor opened into a vast, breathtaking space that defied conventional architectural understanding. What appeared initially as an open-air campus revealed itself to be something far more extraordinary, a self-contained dimensional pocket where multiple reality systems coexisted in carefully managed harmony. Soaring towers of impossible geometry rose alongside more conventional structures of stone and glass. Gardens featuring flora from dozens of different realities thrived in designated biospheres. Walkways of solid light connected elevated platforms where beings of incredible diversity gathered in small groups, engaged in what appeared to be academic discussions. Above it all, the sky shifted continuously between different atmospheric conditions, creating localized her patterns that somehow avoided interfering with each other. The central academic complex, Amara explained as they followed a crystalline path that adjusted its molecular composition with each street. EP to accommodate their specific biological needs. 3,742 distinct faculty members representing 817 dimensional origin points. The student population typically maintains a 5-to-1 ratio to teaching staff. This is incredible, Koyuki breathed, her scientific mind visibly struggling to process the technological and metaphysical implications of what she was witnessing. The energy requirements alone to maintain these reality bubbles must be astronomical. The Academy operates on a self-sustaining dimensional current system, Amara confirmed. Harvesting excess transitional energy from natural boundary fluctuations and redirecting it to support artificial reality matrices. As they traversed the campus, Naruto noticed the curious, sometimes openly fascinated, attention they attracted from other beings. Some appeared relatively humanoid, while others possessed physical forms so alien he struggled to comprehend their basic structure. Yet all shared a common quality of focused intelligence, regarding the newcomers with scholarly interest rather than hostility or fear. "Why are they staring?" Mitsuki asked quietly, her Byakugan finally deactivated as fatigue overtook her specialized visual abilities. Triple convergence nexus potentials are exceedingly rare, Amara explained. Most faculty members will never encounter one during their entire academic careers. Additionally, your dimensional origin point, E7392, is classified as a high isolation sector, with minimal recorded transitions to or from other realities. Meaning we're basically interdimensional country bumpkins, Naruto translated with a wry smile. Amara tilted her head, crystalline structures catching light as she considered his statement. An imprecise but not entirely inaccurate assessment. Your dimension developed in relative isolation from the broader multiverse, creating unique evolutionary patterns in both biological and metaphysical systems. They approached a graceful structure that seemed to be composed of living material, not quite plant, not quite crystal, but something between. Its surface rippled subtly as they neared, as I.F. recognizing and responding to their presence. The interdimensional residential complex, Amara announced. Designed to automatically adapt its internal environment to match the biological and psychological needs of any resident. You will find the accommodations adjust to your specific preferences without requiring direct instruction. The entrance, an archway of intertwining metallic vines, parted smoothly as they approached. Inside, the structure revealed itself to be much larger than external appearances suggested, another dimensional expansion that created space where none should logically exist. You will each have private quarters connected to a shared common area, Amara explained, leading them through corridors that seemed to anticipate their path, opening before them and sealing behind. The residential matrix will analyze your physiological and psychological patterns to create optimal living conditions. The common area she led them to was a spacious chamber that somehow nagged to incorporate elements familiar to all of them. One section resembled a traditional Konoha living space with tatami flooring and shoji screens. Another featured the sleek, technological aesthetic of Snow Country's advanced architecture. A third area contained crystalline furniture similar to what they'd seen at the Convergence Nexus. "This is surprisingly homey," Naruto commented, immediately drawn to a section that reminded him distinctly of his own apartment, yet enhanced with subtle improvements he'd always wanted but never implemented. "The matrix draws from your memories and subconscious preferences," Amara confirmed. "Each private chamber will be even more specifically attuned to individual needs. You may rest and acclimate while I arrange the formal assessment meeting W. ITH the Interdimensional Affairs Division." "Wait," Mitsuki interjected before Amara could depart. "What exactly will this assessment involve? And what are the Academy's intentions regarding Naruto's condition?" Amara regarded her with those unsettling silver eyes, expression unreadable. "Standard protocol for Nexus potentials includes comprehensive analysis of convergence patterns, dimensional stability evaluation, and development of appropriate training methodologies. The Academy's primary objective is to ensure successful integration of convergent energies while preventing catastrophic boundary failures." "And afterward," Koyuki pressed, "once Naruto has stabilized his abilities." "That would depend on the Nexus potential's personal choice," Amara replied. "Some elect to remain at the Academy as researchers or dimensional navigators. Others return to their origin dimensions with appropriate controls in place. The Academy does not forcibly retain Nexus beings against their will." She hesitated. Then added with uncharacteristic uncertainty. However, I must note that the boundary hunter's focused pursuit complicates matters. Even with full convergence achieved, return to origin dimension may prove hazardous without permanent defensive measures in place. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Naruto stated firmly. For now, understanding these powers and learning to control them is the priority. Quote, Amara nodded. A logical approach. I will return in 8 standard units to escort you to the assessment. The residential system will provide appropriate sustenance and hygienic facilities according to your biological requirements. After she departed, the 3-dimensional travelers stood in momentary silence, each processing their extraordinary circumstances in their own way. Well, Naruto finally said with forced lightness, this certainly beats hiding in Konoha waiting for the next dimensional hiccup. It's remarkable, Koyuki agreed, already. Examining the technological interfaces embedded in the common room walls. The scientific applications alone are beyond anything I could have imagined. The integration of biological systems with dimensional technology. The reality manipulation principles. Her eyes shone with intellectual excitement. Mitsuki, however, maintained her reserved caution. We know nothing about this academy's true agenda or how they might view Naruto's abilities. Their clinical approach to Nexus potentials concerns me. They saved us from the boundary hunter, Naruto pointed out. And they seem to understand what's happening to me better than anyone in our dimension could. Which gives them power, Mitsuki countered. Knowledge is leverage, Naruto. We should remain vigilant until we better understand their motivations. Always the guardian, he noted with a small smile. But you're right, we shouldn't take everything at face value. For now, though, I think we all could use some rest. Dimensional Ravel isn't exactly gentle on the system. They each found doors leading to their personal quarters, doors that hadn't been visible until they approached, as if the structure anticipated their needs moment by moment. Naruto's opened to reveal a space that struck a perfect balance between his humble apartment in Konoha and the traditional Uzumaki designs he'd seen in the parallel world where his clan still thrived. Spiraling patterns reminiscent of his clan's ceiling techniques adorned the walls, while the furniture combined functional simplicity with hidden complexity, exactly his preference. See you both in a few hours, he said to his companions, fatigue finally overwhelming his natural resilience. Try to get some actual rest, Mitsuki. Even your eyes need to recover. She acknowledged, this with a small nod before disappearing into her own quarters. Koyuki likewise retreated, already dictating notes to a recording device the residential system had somehow provided her upon entry. Alone in his adapted space, Naruto finally allowed himself to fully process the reality of their situation. In less than a week, he had nearly died, awakened impossible powers, fled across dimensions. And now found himself in a multiversal academy that studied reality itself as an academic discipline. Just another day in the life of Naruto Uzumaki, he murmured to himself, sinking onto a bed. He adjusted its firmness to match his exact preference. Dimensional refugee and Nexus potential, whatever that really means. As exhaustion claimed him, he felt the 3 distinct energy systems within him, celestial, spiritual, and creative, pulsing in their separate rhythms, occasionally finding moments of harmony before diverging again. Each carried fragments of knowledge and power beyond his current understanding, waiting to be integrated into something entirely new. His last conscious thought before sleep claimed him was a simple question. Who, or what, would he become when that integration finally completed? The formal assessment chamber resembled an academic amphitheater crossed with a medical examination facility. Tiered seating surrounded a central platform where various instruments of unfamiliar design awaited. Faculty members from diverse dimensional backgrounds occupied many of the seats, their attention focused intently on Naruto as Amara led their group into the chamber. More observers than I expected, Koyuki commented quietly, noting the dozens of beings studying them with unabashed scientific interest. A triple convergence nexus potential represents a rare research opportunity, Amara explained without apparent concern. Faculty specializing in dimensional mechanics, convergent energetics, and multiverse theory would naturally seek observation privileges. Archmage Isolde awaited them on the central platform, accompanied by Professor Krystallix and 3 additional faculty members Naruto hadn't seen before. Each wore the midnight blue robes that apparently signified senior academic rank, though their physical forms represented vastly different evolutionary paths. Nexus Potential Uzumaki, Izolda greeted him formally. Are you prepared to ergo comprehensive assessment of your convergent condition? As ready as I'll ever be, Naruto replied, approaching the platform with outward confidence despite his inner uncertainty. Though I'd appreciate understanding exactly what this assessment involves before we begin. A reasonable request, Izolda acknowledged. The process has 3 components: energy pattern analysis, convergence stability evaluation, and potential projection mapping. None will cause physical discomfort, though you may experience unusual sensory phenomena as we examine the dimensional aspects of your condition. Naruto glanced back at Mitsuki and Koyuki, who had been directed to specialized observation seats adjacent to the platform. Mitsuki's expression remained vigilant, while Koyuki appeared fascinated by the proceedings. Her scientific curiosity evidently overcoming any apprehension. Let's proceed, he decided, stepping onto the central platform. The assessment began with what Izolda called energy pattern analysis, a process involving crystalline sensors placed at specific points around Naruto's body. These devices emitted soft pulses of multicolored light that somehow interacted with his internal energy systems, creating visible representations in the air above the platform. Remarkable concordance patterns, observed one faculty member, a being with 6 arm-like appendages and compound yes that shifted position across its smooth head. The celestial energy maintains primary dominance in the upper energy meridians, while spiritual essence concentrates in the central core. Creative foe, RCE circulates primarily through lower pathways. Yet note the junction points where overlap occurs, added another observer, this one appearing almost human except for skin that seemed composed of living text, constantly reforming into different written symbols, particularly at the 7 critical convergence nodes. Partial harmonic integration already underway. Professor Krystallix chimed as. Series of musical notes that projected geometric patterns into the energy display. Structural foundations for full convergence present but currently unstable. Integration timeline indeterminate without intervention. Izolda studied the displays with clinical precision. Nexus Potential Uzumaki, please activate each energy system sequentially. Begin with the celestial component. Naruto nodded. Having practiced this separation during the tests in Konoha, he focused on the upper pathways where Kaguya's celestial chakra flowed strongest, allowing it to become temporarily dominant while suppressing the other 2 energy systems. The effect was immediate and dramatic. His eyes transformed into their ringed pattern with spinning tomo, and the energy display above the platform shifted to predo. Minantly purple-white light arranged in complex geometric configurations. Several observers made sounds of appreciation or surprise, recording devices of various designs capturing data from multiple angles. Perfect Otsutsuki energy signature, noted a faculty member with evident excitement. Undiluted despite transmission across multiple genetic generations. The dimensional manipulation potential alone is extraordinary. Now transition to the spiritual essence, Izolda instructed. Naruto shifted his focus, allowing the celestial energy to recede as he channeled the Shinigami's cold power concentrated around his heart. The chamber's temperature dropped noticeably as spectral energy manifested around his body, creating a pale luminescence that revealed normally invisible entities drifting through the assessment chamber. Spirit realm connectivity established at 93% resonance, reported the text-skinned observer. Bidirectional flow between material and immaterial states. Death aspect fully integrated with life force rather than oppositional, most unusual. Creative force activation next, Izolda directed, her professional demeanor unchanged despite the extraordinary phenomena manifesting before her. Naruto completed the sequence, channeling Arceus's creation energy through his lower pathways. Glowing symbols appeared on his skin, the 18 plates, Reaper, sending different aspects of creation power. The platform beneath his feet transformed, ordinary matter temporarily reconfiguring into crystalline structures that grew and evolved in response to his energy output. All 18 creation aspects accessible simultaneously, Professor Krystallix chimed with what sounded like academic excitement. Reality manipulation capabilities extend to fundamental particle level rather than merely molecular rearrangement. Izolda studied the combined data with intense focus before addressing Naruto directly. Can you attempt partial harmonization of any two energy systems? Based on your energy patterns, the celestial and creative forces show highest compatibility potential. Naruto hesitated, remembering the painful feedback and increased dimensional instability that had resulted from previous attempts at combining these powers. I've tried before. The energies tend to fight each other rather than cooperate. Previous attempts occurred without proper dimensional stabilization. Izolda noted. The assessment chamber incorporates boundary reinforcement technology specifically designed to prevent reality distortions during energy manipulation. After a moment's consideration, Naruto nodded. I'll try. He focused inward, visualizing the celestial and creative energies as distinct streams that needed to merge partially rather than remain separate. Instead of forcing them together, he sought natural junction points where they already touched, encouraging these connections to strengthen and expand. To his surprise, the energies responded more readily than ever before. Where previous attempts had resulted in painful feedback, now he felt only a warm resonance as the two power systems established tentative harmony. His transformed eyes remained active, but the symbols on his skin changed from their standard configurations to new, hybrid patterns that combined elements of both energy signatures. The display above the platform reflected this partial integration, showing interweaving strands of purple-white celestial energy and golden creative force forming complex nodes at specific intersection points. Extraordinary, breathed one of the observers. Voluntary harmonization at 37% integration without dimensional instability. The potential's natural affinity for convergence exceeds standard parameters. Affinity isn't the same as control, Izolda cautioned, though her tone betrayed genuine impression. Temporary alignment under controlled conditions differs significantly from stable integration in variable environments. Naruto maintained the partial harmonization for nearly a minute before the strain became too great. He released the connection carefully, allowing the energies to separate naturally rather than forcing them apart. Even this controlled deactivation provided valuable data to the observers, who noted the smooth transition without dimensional disruption. The assessment confirms initial classification, Izolda announced after consulting with the other faculty members. Triple convergence nexus potential with accelerated integration probability. Recommend immediate implementation of customized training protocols to facilitate controlled harmonization. What exactly does that mean in practical terms? Naruto asked, stepping down from the platform as the assessment equipment powered down. It means, Archmage Izolda explained, that you possess not only the rare combination of three prime-dimensional forces, but an unusual natural capacity to integrate them successfully. With proper training, you could achieve full convergence in a fraction of the normal timeframe. And, full convergence, would give me control over these abilities. Naruto pressed, focusing on the practical outcome rather than the academic implications. Control and much more, confirmed Professor Krystallix, geometric patterns shifting to convey earnest communication. A fully realized thus being can navigate dimensional boundaries at will, establish stable transition pathways for others, and manipulate reality within defined parameters across multiple planes of existence. They can also defend themselves effectively against boundary hunters, added Izolda, addressing the unspoken concern. Once full convergence is achieved, your energy signature would stabilize in a form the hunter cannot simply consume. You would become a peer predator rather than prey. Mitsuki approached the platform, her protective instincts evidently triggered by the clinical discussion. This training you propose, what does it involve? And what are the risks? The primary methodology utilizes controlled exposure to convergent scenarios, Izolda explained. Specialized environments where the energy systems are encouraged to harmonize under increasingly complex conditions. The process is not without challenges, but the Academy has refined these techniques through work with previous Nexus potentials. Though none with precisely this combination of energies, noted the text-skinned faculty member. Each convergence pattern requires custom protocols. And the timeline? Koyuki inquired, joining the conversation with her characteristic focus on practical outcomes. How long would this training require? Izolda exchanged glances with her colleagues before responding. Under optimal conditions, approximately 3 lunar cycles of your dimension's temporal flow. However, She added with meaningful emphasis, "We cannot guarantee the boundary hunter will remain deterred by the Academy's protective barriers for that duration. These entities are persistent and highly adaptable. So we're working against the clock," Naruto surmised. "Either I achieve this, full convergence, before the hunter finds a way through your defenses, or—" "Precisely," Isolde confirmed. "The Academy Council has authorized priority resource allocation to your training program given the circumstances. We will begin immediately if you consent." Naruto considered the proposal, aware of both Mitsuki's cautious concern and Koyuki's scientific interest in his peripheral vision. The academic approach felt strange compared to his traditional combat-oriented training, yet the assessment had demonstrated real progress in controlling his abilities under these specialized conditions. "I consent," he decided. "But I have conditions of my own. My companions remain involved throughout the process, with full access to information and training protocols. They're not just observers, they're participants in whatever happens next." Isolde's expression suggested this wasn't standard procedure, but after brief consideration, she nodded. "Acceptable, given their specialized capabilities." The Perceptu-Al specialist's ability to directly observe dimensional anomalies could provide valuable feedback during convergence exercises. The technological adapter's experience with mechanical boundary stabilization offers complementary insights to our methodologies. "They have names," Naruto reminded her firmly. "Mitsuki Hyuga and Princess Koyuki Kazuhana. Using them would be a good start to our cooperation." A flicker of something like respect crossed Isolde's features. "Of course, Ms. Hyuga and Princess Kazuhana will be granted appropriate clearance and participation rights in the training program." "Then we have an agreement," Naruto concluded. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow at first bell," Isolde replied. "Designate Valisa will serve as your primary instructor and liaison, given her expertise in dimensional navigation and prior interaction with your energy signature. For tonight, rest and acclimate to Academy dimensional resonance. Your systems require recovery time following the assessment." As the faculty members began dispersing and the observing scholars filed out of the amphitheater, Amara approached their group with what appeared to be genuine enthusiasm despite her typically reserved demeanor. "This is most fortuitous," she said, her silver eyes gleaming with academic excitement. "Triple convergence training falls precisely within my specialized research parameters. The opportunity to document your progression will yield invaluable data for the archival collective." "Glad to be such an interesting research subject," Naruto replied with mild irony. "Though I'm more interested in practical results than academic documentation." "The two objectives are not mutually exclusive," Amara observed. "Precise documentation enhances training effectiveness by identifying optimal convergence pathways." She hesitated, then added with unusual personalization, "I confess professional fascination with your specific energy combination. The celestial spiritual creative triad represents a theoretical ideal in convergence studies that has never been directly observed in my research career." "I aim to impress," Naruto said with a small smile, finding her scholarly enthusiasm somehow endearing despite its clinical nature. "Though I'm still getting used to being an interdimensional curiosity." "Your adaptation capacity appears substantial," Amara noted, misinterpreting his humor as literal statement. "A beneficial trait for convergence training. The process requires significant psychological flexibility alongside energy manipulation skills." Koyuki interjected with evident interest. "What exactly will this training involve?" "The scientific principles behind convergence would be valuable for my own dimensional research. A combination of methodologies," Amara explained, leading them from the assessment chamber toward what appeared to be a research archive. "Controlled exposure to dimensional boundary conditions, harmonization exercises for disparate energy systems, and progressive integration protocols developed through cumulative nexus studies." As they followed her through corridors that seemed to bend space itself, Naruto noticed Mitsuki's continued silence. While Koyuki engaged eagerly with Amara's technical explanations, the Hyuga observer maintained a watchful distance, her expression suggesting deep thoughts behind her characteristic reserve. "You're unusually quiet," he commented, dropping back to walk beside her while the others continued ahead. "I'm processing," Mitsuki replied after a moment. "This place, these beings, they view you as a fascinating specimen rather than a person." Even with your insistence on recognizing our names and identities, their fundamental perspective remains clinical. They're academics, Naruto pointed out. Clinical observation is their default approach to everything. But that doesn't mean they don't care about the outcome. Perhaps, Mitsuki conceded, but I question whether their priorities align with ours. They seek knowledge about Nexus beings and convergence patterns. We seek your safety and eventual return home. Naruto considered this valid concern. Then it's good you're here to keep that priority in focus. Between your protective instincts and Koyuki's scientific skepticism, I'm well covered against academic exploitation. This earned a small smile from Mitsuki, a rare expressee. On that transformed her usually serious features. Someone needs to remember you're more than the sum of your energy signatures. I'm counting on it, he replied warmly. Your perspective grounds me. When all this interdimensional theory gets overwhelming. They rejoined the others as Amara led them into a vast circular chamber lined with what appeared to be liquid crystal columns. Each column contained swirling data patterns that occasionally coalesced into recognizable images or text before dissolving back into abstract formations. The Convergence Archives, Amara announced with evident pride. The Academy's repository of all known information regarding Nexus beings, dimensional transition mechanics, and boundary phenomena. We will utilize these resources to construct your specialized training protocols. Koyuki approached one of the crystal columns with undisguised fascination. This storage medium, it's not digital or conventional data architecture. The information appears to exist in a quantum superposition state. Correct, Amara confirmed, pleased by the princess's accurate observation. Conventional data storage proves inadequate for dimensional information that exists simultaneously in multiple states. Quantum crystalline matrices allow maintenance of superposition knowledge while permitting targeted extraction through resonant inquiry. In simpler terms, Naruto translated for his own benefit. It's a fancy library where the books change depending on who's reading them. Amara tilted her head, crystalline structures catching light as she considered his analogy. An imprecise but conceptually valid simplification. The archives respond to the specific dimensional resonance of the inquirer, presenting information in accessible format for their native reality framework. She approached a central pedestal that appeared to be grown rather than constructed from the same crystal as the surrounding columns. Placing her hands on its surface, she initiated what appeared to be a search protocol, causing data streams from multiple columns to flow toward their position. I am compiling all relevant convergence training methodologies applicable to your specific energy combination. She explained as holographic displays materialized around them. While no exact precedent exists for celestial spiritual creative integration, component pairings have been documented in 17 previous cases. Quote, the displays showed various beings, some humanoid, others wildly different, undergoing what appeared to be training exercises similar to what Isolde had described. In each case, visible energy patterns were being methodically harmonized through specialized techniques. These previous Nexus beings, Naruto asked, studying the images with growing curiosity. What happened to them after achieving convergence? Amara's expression shifted subtly, the first indication of emotional complexity beneath her academic exterior. Outcomes varied significantly based on individual choice and circumstance. Approximately 63% elected to remain affiliated with the Academy as dimensional researchers or transition specialists. 22% return to their origin dimensions with appropriate safeguards. The remainder, she hesitated, silver eyes dimming slightly. The remainder were lost to various factors including boundary hunter predation, convergence destabilization, or voluntary dimensional transcendence. Mitsuki inquired, her natural caution heightened by Amara's unusual hesitation. Some fully converged Nexus beings eventually evolve beyond conventional dimensional constraints, Amara explained carefully. They become entities existing simultaneously across multiple reality planes, a state incompatible with continued interaction with dimension-bound beings. They become gods, Naruto translated bluntly, recognizing the implications. Or something close enough that it makes no difference to those left behind. Amara neither confirmed nor denied this interpretation directly. The classification of post-transcendent entities remains philosophically complex. What appears as divinity from within dimensional constraints may simply represent advanced evolutionary progression from a broader perspective. But it's a possibility, Naruto pressed. That full convergence could eventually lead to this, transcendence. A distant theoretical possibility, Amara emphasized. Only 3 documented cases exist among hundreds of recorded Nexus beings. The progression requires specific conditions unlike Ely to manifest without deliberate pursuit. Before they could explore this concerning revelation further, the archive chamber's entrance dilated to admit Professor Krystallix, whose geometric features were configured in patterns suggesting urgency. Designate Valisa. The crystalline being chimed. Security protocols have detected anomalous dimensional fluctuations at the outer boundary layer. Pattern analysis suggests preliminary probing by the hunter entity. So soon, Amara's composure slipped momentarily, revealing genuine concern. Transition tracking should have required minimum her T6 standard units to reconstruct our pathway. The entity demonstrates accelerated analytical capabilities beyond previous encounters, Professor Krystallix reported. Boundary reinforcement protocols have been enhanced. But Archmage Isolde requests immediate implementation of accelerated convergence training to prepare contingency response. Understood, Amara acknowledged, immediately. Terminating the archive display with a fluid gesture. Please inform the Archmage that preliminary protocols will commence at next light cycle. After the professor departed, Amara turned to Naruto and his companions with newfound urgency. It appears our timeline has compressed. The hunter's pursuit capabilities exceed expected parameters. How long do we have? Koyuki asked directly. Impossible to predict with certainty. Amara admitted. The Academy's boundary defenses are formidable, designed to withstand multidimensional intrusion attempts. However, this particular hunter has demons. Traded unprecedented persistence and adaptability in pursuing your specific energy signature. Then we don't wait until tomorrow, Naruto decided firmly. We start now. If this thing is already testing your defenses, every hour matters. Amara hesitated, internal calculation visible in her silver eyes. Accelerated implementation without proper rest cycle integration poses increased stress variables on your energy systems. I've trained under worse conditions, Naruto assured her. During the Fourth Shinobi War, we developed new techniques in the middle of battle with no preparation time. Compared to that, this is a luxury. The dimensional cartographer considered his determination, then nodded decisively. Very well, we will proceed with preliminary harmonization exercises immediately. The integration chamber can be prepared within 1 standard unit. What can we do to help? Mitsuki asked, her previous reservations about the Academy temporarily set aside in the face of this more immediate threat. Ms. Hyuga, your perceptual abilities will be invaluable for monitoring dimensional stability during the exercises, Amara replied, acknowledging her by name as Naruto had requested. Princess Kazuhana, your experience with technological boundary stabilization may offer insights our conventional approaches have overlooked. As they left the archives, Naruto felt a familiar sensation building within him, the 3 energy systems responding to his heightened emotional state with increased activity. Unlike previous episodes, however, he found himself more aware of their patterns. Able to exert subtle influence over their fluctuations thanks to the assessment chamber's controlled testing. Perhaps the academic approach had merits after all. Understanding the mechanics of his condition provided a foundation for control that pure instinct couldn't match. Theory and practice together might accelerate his progress beyond what either could accomplish alone. Outside the archive chamber, the Academy continued its normal operations, diverse beings moving between buildings engaged in the pursuit and exchange of knowledge across dimensional boundaries. Yet beneath this scholarly atmosphere, Naruto sensed a new undercurrent of tension. Word of the boundary hunter's early detection had spread, creating ripples of concern throughout the faculty. Their peaceful academic Avean had become the next battleground in a pursuit spanning multiple dimensions. And Naruto, still learning to control powers he barely understood, stood at the center of the coming conflict. The integration chamber proved to be a spherical space suspended in what Amara called null dimension, a buffer zone between reality planes where physical laws became more suggestion than requirement. The chamber itself maintained a stable environment through complex boundary technologies, but beyond its transparent walls stretched absolute void, neither light nor dark but the absence of either concept. This specialized training environment allows controlled manipulation of dimensional constants, Amara explained as she adjusted settings on a crystalline control panel. We can simulate specific boundary conditions without risking actual reality distortions. The chamber's interior contained a central platform surrounded by concentric rings of what appeared to be liquid light, energy in partially materialized form. These rings could be configured in various patterns to create different training scenarios according to Amara's explanation. Mitsuki and Koyuki observed from a slightly elevated section of the chamber, separated from the main platform by a translucent barrier that would protect them from energy fluctuations while allowing direct observation. Both women appeared tense but focused, their distinct approaches to the situation evident in their positioning, Mitsuki alert and watchful, Koyuki analytically studying the chamber's technological components. The first exercise FOC uses on establishing conscious connection pathways between your three energy systems, Amara instructed, guiding Naruto to the central platform. Currently, these energies interact primarily through involuntary resonance during moments of stress or dimensional transition. Voluntary pathway creation is essential for controlled convergence. Naruto took his position at the center of the platform, Here the chamber's design naturally focused ambient energies. How do I create these pathways? Begin by individually activating each energy system as you did during assessment, Amara directed. But instead of maintaining separation, visualize tendrils of energy extending from one system toward another, seeking connection points where natural resonance already exists. Following her instructions, Naruto activated Kaguya's celestial chakra first, feeling the familiar transformation of his eyes and the expanded perception it provided. Through these enhanced senses, he could perceive the Sham's true nature, not merely a physical space but a complex dimensional construct existing simultaneously in multiple states. Excellent activation pattern, Amara noted, monitoring readings from the control panel. Now establish the spiritual essence while maintaining celestial flow. This proved more challenging than sequential activation, as Naruto channeled the Shinigami's cold power alongside Kaguya's celestial energy. The two forces immediately began to repel each other, like opposing magnetic fields fighting for dominance. You're attempting parallel activation rather than integrated flow, Amara observed. Visualize connection points, junctions where the energies naturally touch despite their opposing qualities. Naruto closed his transformed eyes, focusing inward on his chakra network. Seeking not control but understanding, he allowed his awareness to flow through the competing energy systems, searching for places where they already interacted despite their apparent opposition. He found the first connection point near his heart, a place where celestial and spiritual energies brushed against each other in an intricate dance of repulsion and attraction. Instead of forcing them together, he simply focused attention on this natural junction, encouraging communication rather than combination. Energy synchronization detected at primary junction point, Amara reported, her voice taking on a quality of scientific excitement. Continuation pattern establishing along adjacent pathways. Encouraged by this progress, Naruto sought additional junction points throughout his network. Each time he found one, he focused awareness there, acting as witness rather than controller of the process. Gradually, tentative connections formed, delicate bridges between energy systems that had previously operated in isolation. Add the creative force now, Amara instructed. But maintain the existing connections first, build upon the foundation you've established. This third integration pushed Naruto to the limits of his concentration. Arceus's creation energy responded eagerly to his call, flowing through his lower pathways with vibrant intensity. But its dynamic, ever-changing nature threatened to overwhelm the delicate connections he'd established between the other two systems. Junction stress increasing, came Mitsuki's voice from the observation area, her Byakugan active despite the earlier strain. The creative energy is destabilizing the existing connections. Adjust flow rate, Amara suggested urgently. The creative force requires differential integration, sequential junction activation rather than simultaneous connection. Understanding intuitively what she meant, Naruto visualized the creative energy flowing in pulses rather than continuous streams, touching each junction point briefly before receding, then advancing to the next in a rhythmic pattern. This pulsed approach allowed the volatile creative force to establish tentative communication with the other energies without overwhelming their existing connections. Remarkable adaptation, Amara observed, the control panel displaying complex patterns that reflected the evolving integration. Ripple junction coherence establishing at 17% harmony, significantly above projected threshold for initial exercise. Naruto hardly heard her assessment, his consciousness increasingly absorbed in the internal landscape of energy interactions. As connections multiplied, something unexpected began to happen, information transfer across the newly formed pathways. Fragments of knowledge from each power source began to flow between systems, creating new understanding that transcended the individual components. From Kaguya's celestial chakra came comprehension of dimensional structures, the fundamental architecture of reality across multiple planes of existence. The Shinigami's spiritual essence conveyed understanding of consciousness beyond physical form, how awareness persisted in, transformed beyond material constraints. Arceus's creation energy offered insight into the building blocks of existence, the patterns underlying all matter and energy throughout the multiverse. These knowledge fragments didn't arrive as coherent thoughts but as intuitive understanding, knowing without learning, comprehension without study. As the energy systems established stronger connections, this information exchange accelerated, creating a feedback loop of expanding awareness. Cognitive integration detected alongside energy harmonization, Amara reported with evident surprise. Knowledge transfer protocols activating spontaneously. This typically requires specialized catalyst exposure in later training phases. His brain activity is changing, Koyuki noted from the observation area, studying monitoring displays with scientific precision. Neural pathways reconfiguring to accommodate multidimensional processing patterns. Is that dangerous? Mitsuki asked sharply, her protective instincts immediately triggered. Not inherently, Amara assured her, though her tone held uncertainty. But accelerated cognitive evolution usually occurs gradually throughout convergence training. This spontaneous progression suggests unusual compatibility between his native neural architecture and convergent information structures. On the platform, Naruto had become only distantly aware of their discussion. The expanding connections between his energy systems had created a state of heightened consciousness. Not quite meditative trance but something deeper and more profound. He perceived, not only the integration chamber but layers of reality beyond it, glimpsing the Academy's position within the broader multiverse. More significantly, he began to understand the boundary hunter in YS that transcended Amara's academic explanations. He sensed its fundamental nature, not merely a predator but a corrective force, evolved to maintain dimensional equilibrium by eliminating convergence points that might destabilize established reality patterns. The hunter didn't pursue him from malice but from instinctual response to his disruptive potential. This understanding didn't diminish the threat, but it transformed his perception of the conflict. The boundary hunter wasn't evil, it was performing its evolutionary function in a multiverse that required balance between creation and destruction, stability and change. Naruto, came Mitsuki's concerned voice, penetrating his expanded awareness. Your energy signature is changing rapidly. The connections are multiplying faster than Amara predicted. With effort, Naruto pulled his consciousness back from the multidimensional perspectives that had opened before him. The junction pathways he'd established were indeed multiplying exponentially, creating a web of connections that threatened to advance beyond his ability to monitor or control. Temporary integration shutdown recommended, Amara advised, her typically calm demeanor showing signs of concern. First phase exercises should not progress beyond 25% harmony without stabilization protocols in place. Recognizing the wisdom in her caution, Naruto began, carefully disengaging the connections, not severing them completely but reducing their activity to manageable levels. Like gradually dimming lights rather than switching them off, he eased the energy systems back toward their individual states while maintaining the pathways he'd established. As the integration subsided, he became fully present in the chamber once more. The expanded awareness receded, leaving him with lingering impressions rather than direct perception of multidimensional realities. Yet something had fundamentally changed. The three energy systems no longer felt entirely separate within him. The connections remained, dormant but intact, ready to be activated again when needed. Exercise completion at optimal parameters, Amara announced, though her silver eyes studied Naruto with new interest. Harmony threshold achieved at 23% integration, significantly exceeding projected outcomes for initial training. Naruto stepped off the platform, feeling simultaneously energized and drained by the experience. That was intense. Is it always like that? Your experience appears exceptional, Amara replied. Most Nexus potentials require multiple sessions to establish even preliminary junction pathways. Your systems demonstrated unusual compatibility despite their disparate origins. You looked like you were seeing something beyond this chamber, Mitsuki observed, deactivating her Byakugan with a slight wince of discomfort. Your expression changed completely during the deeper integration phase. I was, Naruto confirmed, trying to articulate the experience. It's like suddenly understanding languages you never studied. I could perceive how dimensions connect, how consciousness transcends physical form, how reality is constructed at its most fundamental level. He paused, then added more soberly, I also understood the boundary hunter better. What it is, why it hunts beings like me. You received information transfer from all three energy sources simultaneously, Amara noted with academic fascination. Such comprehensive cognitive integration typically emerges only in advanced convergence stages. Is that good or concerning? Koyuki asked practically, joining them from the observation area. Both, Amara admitted. Accelerated integration suggests exceptional compatibility for full convergence. However, rapid cognitive evolution without corresponding psychological adaptation protocols could potentially overwhelm neural processing capacity. You mean his mind might not be able to handle the information flood, Mitsuki translated, her concern evident. A theoretical risk, Amara acknowledged. Though his adaptation thus far suggests natural resilience to integration stress. Naruto considered this as he processed the lingering effects of the exercise. Despite the intensity of the experience, he didn't feel overwhelmed, stretched beyond his previous limitations, certainly, but not to breaking point. The knoll edge fragments he'd received weren't crushing his consciousness but expanding it in ways that felt natural despite their extraordinary nature. I can handle more, he stated with quiet confidence. He connections want to form. Fighting them is harder than allowing them to develop naturally. Amara studied him with those unsettling silver eyes, something beyond academic interest flickering in their depths. Your intuitive understanding aligns with advanced convergence theory. Natural junction formation through conscious permission rather than forced integration produces more stable harmonic patterns. Then we continue, Naruto decided. How soon can we attempt the next level of exercises? Standard protocols recommend minimum 6-unit recovery period between integration sessions, Amara replied. However, she hesitated, then continued with unusual personalization. Your demonstrated capacity suggests conventional limitations may not apply. With appropriate monitoring, we could proceed to secondary protocols after a shortened recovery interval. The boundary hunter isn't following standard protocols either, Naruto pointed out. We need to accelerate this training if we're going to stay ahead of it. Agreed, Amara nodded, though I must insist on at least 2 standard units for basic energy replenishment. Even exceptional systems require recovery time. 2 hours I can manage, Naruto conceded. What's the next phase after that? Junction pathway expansion and preliminary harmonic oscillation training, Amara explained, already adjusting settings on the control panel to prepare for the next session. Establishing stable energy exchange patterns between connection points to create self-sustaining integration frameworks. As they exited the integration amber into the surrounding academy complex, Naruto noticed subtle changes in how he perceived his environment. The connections established during the exercise, though currently inactive, had left lasting effects on his sensory processing. He could perceive faint outlines of dimensional boundaries where realities intersected throughout the academy grounds, thin places where the separation between planes of existence became more permeable. More significantly, he found himself increasingly aware of Amara's true nature. Beyond her humanoid appearance, he glimpsed her multidimensional structure, A.B. Angu's consciousness extended into planes of existence beyond normal perception. Her physical form was merely the most accessible manifestation of a much more complex entity. You're not originally from a physical dimension, are you? He asked her quietly as they walked along a crystalline pathway back toward their residential quarters. Amara's step faltered momentarily, the first true surprise she displayed since their meeting. Your perceptual evolution progresses more rapidly than anticipated. You were correct. My origin plane exists primarily as organized information patterns rather than conventional matter-energy constructs. My physical manifestation is an adaptation for interaction with dimension-bound entities. That explains your interest in Nexus beings, Naruto realized. You're studying transitions between states of existence that you've experienced personally. A perceptive observation, Amara acknowledged, something like respect entering her typically clinical tone. The archival collective specializes in documenting evolutionary pathways between dimensional states. Nexus beings represent critical transition points in multiversal development, bridges between established reality frameworks and emerging possibility spaces. Now you're just showing off with the terminology, Naruto teased gently, finding her academic formality somehow endearing despite its alienness. To his surprise, Amara's expression shifted into what appeared to be a genuine smile, an emotional response rather than academic acknowledgement. Specialized vocabulary serves precision purposes in multidimensional discourse. However, she added with what might have been a touch of self-awareness, communicative adaptation to audience parameters would indeed be more effective. She means she'll try to use smaller words. Koyuki translated with amusement, having overheard their exchange. Accurate simplification, Amara confirmed, that unusual smile lingering. Rest period commenced. Residential adaptation system will provide appropriate nutritional and recovery provisions. As they reached their quarters, Mitsuki drew Naruto aside while Koyuki engaged Amara in technical Ks. Tie-ons about the integration chamber's dimensional mechanics. Something's changing, Mitsuki observed quietly, studying Naruto with both professional assessment and personal concern. Not just your abilities, but how you interact with this place and these beings. You're adapting to their perspective, speaking their language. Is that bad? Naruto asked, genuinely curious about her perception. Not inherently, she replied thoughtfully, but I wonder how it affects your connection to home, to who you were before all this began. The question struck deeper than Mitsuki might have intended. Naruto had been so focused on mastering his emerging abilities that he'd given little thought to how they might be changing his fundamental identity. Was he still the same Naruto Uzumaki who had left Konoha? Or was he becoming something else entirely? A Nexus being, whose perspective transcended his original dimensional limitations. I'm still me, he assured her, though uncertainty colored his tone. Just expanding, I guess. Learning to see beyond what I could before. Mitsuki's pale eyes studied him with quiet intensity. Just don't expand so far that you can't find your way back. Some forms of knowledge change you in ways that can't be undone. Is that concern as my assigned guardian or something more personal? Naruto asked gently, sensing deeper emotions beneath her professional caution. A faint color touched Mitsuki's normally pale cheeks. Both. My duty is to monitor and protect you, but... She hesitated, then continued with careful honesty, my concern extends beyond professional parameters. You remain connected to your humanity despite these extraordinary changes. That quality is worth preserving. Before Naruto could respond to this unusually personal admission, the Academy's alert system activated, a resonant tone that echoed through the complex with unmistakable urgency. Amara immediately accessed a communication panel in the nearby wall, her expression shifting to focused concern as she received information. Boundary breach detected in outer defensive perimeter, she reported, abandoning conversational pretenses in the face of emergency. The Hunter has penetrated the primary dimensional barriers 17 standard units ahead of projected timeline. How? Koyuki demanded, immediately grasping the implications. You said the Academy's defenses are among the strongest in the multiverse. They are, Amara confirmed grimly. Which suggests the Hunter has evolved new penetration capabilities or received external assistance. Either possibility represents significant concern. External assistance? Mitsuki questioned sharply. You mean something is helping it breach your defenses deliberately? A theoretical possibility requiring investigation, Amara acknowledged. However, immediate priorities focus on secondary containment reinforcement and accelerated convergence training. Another alert tone sounded, higher and more urgent than the first. Amara's silver eyes widened with genuine alarm. Secondary breach detected in faculty research sector, she reported. Hunter entity utilizing distributed manifestation strategy, creating multiple simultaneous incursion points to divide defensive resources. It's hunting smart, Naruto realized, recalling the strategic understanding he'd glimpsed during the integration exercise. Not just following instinct but adapting tactics based on opposition patterns. Correct assessment, Amara agreed, already moving toward the exit. We must proceed immediately to secure training facilities. The integration chamber's enhanced boundary protections make it optimal for continued convergence work despite peripheral breaches. As they hurried through suddenly active academy corridors, faculty and students moving with purposeful urgency toward defensive positions, Naruto felt the three energy systems within him responding to the emergency. The connection pathways established during training became more active, allowing limited energy flow between previously isolated systems. With this partial integration came enhanced perception. Through Kaguya's celestial vision, he glimpsed dimensional weak points throughout the academy complex where reality had been stretched thin by repeated transitions. The Shinigami's spiritual awareness revealed concentrated fear among the academy population, emotional energies visible as colored auras surrounding beings of diverse form. Arceus's creation sense showed him potential futures branching from the present moment, probability paths leading to vastly different outcomes depending on actions taken in the next few hours. These perceptual enhancements confirmed what instinct already told him. The boundary hunter had indeed evolved beyond its previous limitations. It wasn't merely following his dimensional trail now but actively countering the Academy's defensive measures with strategic precision. Something had changed in the hunter's fundamental nature, or something was guiding its actions with intelligence beyond instinctual predation. As they approached the research sector adjacent to the integration chamber, they encountered Professor Crystallix coordinating defensive measures with a team of faculty members. The crystalline being's geometric features were configured in patterns suggesting urgent concentration. Designate Valisa. Professor Crystallix acknowledged their arrival with harmonic tones. Hunter entity penetration exceeds projected parameters. Distributed manifestation observed at 7 distinct breach points simultaneously. Coordinated tactical approach suggests evolved cognitive capacity, Amara observed with academic precision despite the emergency circumstances. Has Archmage Isolde implemented Protocol Omega? Initiated at first breach detection, the professor confirmed. Dimensional lockdown progressing at 83% completion. However, the crystalline being's harmonic tones shifted to lower, more somber frequencies. Hunter manifestation in research sector has accessed transition laboratory. Critical research subjects compromised. Amara's composed demeanor faltered visibly. The convergence samples. 4 secured, 3 compromised, Professor Crystallix reported gravely. Energy signature analysis indicates targeted absorption rather than random consumption. The implications of this exchange weren't lost on Naruto. It's absorbing other convergent energies to enhance its capabilities, he stated, connecting facts with intuitive understanding from his integration experience. That's how it's evolving so quickly. It's not just hunting me, it's consuming anything with similar properties to become stronger. Accurate assessment, Amara confirmed, abandoning academic detachment in the face of escalating threat. The hunter has transitioned from instinctual predation to strategic resource acquisition. This represents unprecedented evolution in boundary entity behavior patterns. Another alert, this one a pulsing harmonic that seemed to resonate through the structure itself rather than conventional sound systems. Faculty members throughout the corridor paused momentarily, receiving information through some shared awareness network inaccessible to visitors. Central laboratory breach confirmed, Professor Crystallix announced for their benefit. Chair primary manifestation approaching Convergence Studies Division. Estimated arrival at Integration Chamber, 12 temporal units. We don't have time for standard training progression, Naruto realized. Decisiveness replacing uncertainty. We need to attempt full integration immediately. Accelerated convergence without preparatory phases carries significant destabilization risks, Amara cautioned. Though her tone suggested she recognized the necessity despite the dangers. Greater risk exists in incremental approach given current threat parameters, Professor Crystallix chimed supportively. Full integration attempt represents optimal strategic response despite procedural concerns. What would this involve? Mitsuki asked. Professional Guardian mode fully engaged despite her earlier personal moment with Naruto. Simultaneous activation of all junction pathways, Amara explained rapidly as they continued toward the integration chamber. Forced harmonic convergence under controlled dimensional pressure. The process typically requires extensive preparation and gradual progression through 17 distinct integration phases. But theoretically possible in one attempt. Koyuki pressed, her scientific mind evaluating possibilities even in crisis. Theoretical possibility exists, Amara confirmed reluctantly. 3 documented cases of spontaneous full convergence under extreme dimensional stress. Survival rate, 33%. 1 in 3, Naruto translated grimly. Better odds than none in 3 if that thing reaches me before I'm ready. They reach the integration chamber to find Archmage Isolde already present, reconfiguring the facility's systems with rapid, precise movements. Her normally composed features showed signs of strain as she acknowledged their arrival with a terse nod. Hunter entity has breached inner research perimeter, she reported without preamble. Distributed manifestations have merged into primary form demonstrating enhanced convergent properties. Conventional containment measures proving ineffective against evolved penetration capabilities. We need to attempt full integration, Naruto stated firmly, stepping onto the chamber's central platform without waiting for permission. Amara believes it's possible even without completing the preliminary training phases. Isolde's sharp gaze moved from Naruto to Amara. Your assessment. Designate Valisa. Nexus potential Uzumaki demonstrated exceptional integration capacity during preliminary exercises, Amara replied, professional precision returning despite the crisis. Junction pathways established at 23% harmony exceeded projected thresholds by significant margin. Cognitive integration occurred spontaneously alongside energy harmonization. The risk factors remain substantial, Isolde noted, though her hands continued working on the control systems, preparing for the attempt despite her cautionary words. No greater than facing the hunter with partial integration. Naruto countered, at least this way we have a fighting chance. After a moment's calculation, Isolde nodded decisively. Proceed with emergency convergence protocol. Maximum boundary reinforcement engaged. She turned to Mitsuki and Koyuki. Your observational data may prove critical during the procedure. Monitor from standard positions but be prepared for rapid evacuation if integration destabilizes. As the women took their positions in the observation area, Amara joined Naruto on the central platform. I will guide the integration process directly, she explained. Her silver eyes meeting his with unusual emotional intensity. My multidimensional structure allows me to perceive and influence junction pathways more precisely than external instrumentation. You're putting yourself at risk, Naruto realized, understanding that her direct involvement during potentially catastrophic energy integration could damage or destroy her manifested form. Acceptable parameters, she replied simply. Your successful convergence represents priority objective transcending individual preservation concerns. Something about her willingness to risk her self, moving beyond clinical academic interest to personal investment, touched Naruto deeply. This being from a dimension of pure information had developed genuine concern for his survival beyond the scientific value of his unusual convergence pattern. Thank you, he said quietly, the simple human expression somehow inadequate for the multidimensional sentiment he wished to convey. Amara acknowledged his gratitude with a slight inclination of her head, crystalline structures catching light in what seemed a more personal, less formal gesture than her usual movements. Prepare for simultaneous activation of all energy systems. I will establish direct perception links to monitor junction formation and provide guidance during critical phase transitions. As the integration chamber hummed with H-power, boundary reinforcement fields creating a secure pocket of stabilized reality around them, Naruto centered himself for the most challenging energy manipulation he had yet attempted. Rather than sequential activation of individual systems, he would need to engage all 3 simultaneously while establishing and maintaining hundreds of junction pathways between them. Preliminary phase commencing, Isolde announced from the control station. Dimensional pressure calibrated to optimal convergence parameters. Emergency termination protocols standing by. Naruto closed his eyes, focusing INW on the 3 distinct energy signatures within his chakra network. Instead of calling them forward individually, he extended his awareness to all simultaneously, acknowledging their presence and inviting activation without imposing control. The response was immediate and powerful. Kaguya's celestial chakra, the Shinigami's spiritual essence, and Arceus's creation energy all surged forward at once, flooding his system with power that transcended conventional chakra dynamics. His transformed eyes activated automatically, while spectral energy manifested around his body and creation symbols appeared on his skin in rapidly shifting patterns. Initial activation successful, Amara observed, her voice somehow reaching Naruto both externally and directly into his consciousness. Now visualize the junction pathways established during preliminary training. Perceive them as a network rather than individual connections. Following her guidance, Naruto shifted his awareness to the delicate pathways formed during their earlier session. Previously, he had focused on each connection individually. Now he expanded his perception to encompass the entire network simultaneously, hundreds of potent junction points where the three energy systems could communicate and integrate. Junction network visualization established, Amara confirmed, her silver eyes now glowing with internal light as she monitored his progress. Begin activation sequence, not sequential but harmonic progression. Visualize resonant frequencies that allow simultaneous communication across all pathways. This concept stretched Naruto's understanding of energy manipulation beyond anything he'd previously attempted. Rather than directing chakra flow through specific pathways as in conventional jutsu, he needed to establish harmonic resonance patterns that would naturally activate connections without direct control. Drawing on the knowledge fragments received during his previous integration experience, Naruto visualized his entire energy system as a multidimensional instrument, each junction point a string that could be tuned to specific frequencies. When properly harmonized, these frequencies would create resonant patterns that enhanced rather than interfered with each other. Harmonic initialization detected, Amara reported, her tone reflecting both academic fascination and genuine excitement. Junction activation proceeding at geometric progression rate. Outside his internal focus, Naruto vaguely heard Isolde reporting increasing energy synchronization percentages, 27%, 35%, 42%. Numbers rising faster than anyone had apparently anticipated. Yet he remained concentrated on the delicate process of harmonizing his three fundamental energy systems. As integration deepened, his consciousness expanded beyond the physical constraints of the integration chamber. He perceived the Academy complex in its entirety, a dimensional construct of extraordinary complexity, designed to exist at the intersection of multiple reality planes. Beyond the Academy's boundaries, he glimpsed the wider multiverse, countless dimensions existing simultaneously, separated by boundaries of varying permeability. More immediately concerning, he perceived the Boundary Hunter's approach, a predatory entity of immense power moving through the Academy's defensive layers with devastating efficiency. Its form had indeed evolved beyond his previous encounters, incorporating elements absorbed from other convergent energy sources. Where before it had been amorphous and instinctual, now it displayed structure and purpose, a multidimensional predator with emerging intelligence guiding its hunting patterns. Hunter entity breaching final security perimeter, came Isolde's distant voice. Estimated arrival at integration chamber, 3 temporal units. Integration progressing at 68% synchronization, Amara reported, her presence in Naruto's expanded awareness becoming more distinct as their energies established resonant connections. Accelerating toward critical threshold, the harmonization process had developed its own momentum now, connection pathways activating and expanding without conscious direction. The three energy systems, celestial, spiritual, and creative, no longer fought for dominance but established complex relationships had enhanced their individual properties while creating something greater than their separate functions. With this deepening integration came comprehension beyond anything Naruto had previously experienced. He understood the Boundary Hunter's true nature not merely as predator but as multiversal immune response, a mechanism evolved to eliminate potentially destabilizing convergence points that threatened established reality patterns. He perceived the delicate balance maintaining dimensional separation, necessary boundaries preventing chaotic blending of incompatible reality systems. Most significantly, he glimpsed his own potential role within this cosmic equilibrium. Not merely a Nexus being with the ability to traverse dimensional boundaries, but a potential harmonizer, an entity capable of establishing stable connections between realities without disrupting their fundamental integrity. Convergence approaching critical threshold, Amara's voice reached him through layers of expanded consciousness. 87% synchronization achieved. Final integration phase requires deliberate completion, conscious acceptance of full convergence state. In simpler terms, the process had brought him to the threshold. But crossing it required choice rather than passive progression. Full convergence would fundamentally transform him from dimensional being to multidimensional entity, permanently altering his relationship to reality itself. In that moment of choice, Naruto hesitated. Not from fear of the transformation, but from awareness of what it might mean for his connections to home, to his identity, to the people who mattered to him. Would complete integration separate him from what made him human? Would transcending dimensional limitations mean losing touch with what had defined his existence until now? Integration destabilizing at threshold boundary, Amara reported urgently. Conscious resolution required for completion. Hunter entity breaching outer chamber defenses. Izolda's voice added with controlled urgency. Immediate action required. In his expanded awareness, Naruto perceived Mitsuki and Koyuki in the observation area, their concern evident in their energy signatures. Despite the extraordinary circumstances, their presence anchored him to his humanity, reminding him of connections that transcended dimensional physics and energy systems. That realization provided the answer he sought. True convergence didn't require abandoning his humanity but expanding it, integrating new understanding while maintaining the connections and values that defined him. The three energy systems within him could harmonize completely without erasing his fundamental identity. With this understanding, Naruto made his choice, not surrendering to convergence as passive transformation, but actively embracing integration while maintaining his core self. Convergence threshold breach, Amara announced, wonder evident even through her clinical terminology. Full integration initiating at unprecedented harmony levels. The final barriers between Naruto's three energy systems dissolved not in chaotic merger but in perfect synchronization. Celestial, spiritual, and creative forces flowed together in seamless unity, creating something entirely new yet composed of recognizable elements. Power beyond conventional understanding filled him, yet remained perfect. Lee controlled through the harmonic patterns established during integration. His perception expanded to encompass multiple dimensional planes simultaneously, yet remained anchored in his physical form within the integration chamber. He existed both within conventional space-time and beyond it, a nexus being fully realized yet still connected to his original dimensional identity. Convergence compl. Eat at 98% harmonic integration, Izolda reported with undisguised amazement. Stability parameters exceeding all recorded precedent. As full integration settled into stable equilibrium, Naruto opened eyes that now reflected his transformed state, neither Kaguya's ringed pattern nor ordinary blue, but something between that shifted based on which dimensional plane he focused upon. His body appeared outwardly unchanged, yet to those with perceptual abilities, he now existed in multiple states simultaneously, physical form overlaid with energy patterns extending beyond conventional reality. Perfect convergence, Amara breathed, silver eyes wide with something beyond academic appreciation. You've achieved what theoretical models predicted but practical implementation has ever demonstrated. Complete harmonic integration without dimensionality loss. Before Naruto could respond, the integration chamber's reinforced walls shuddered under tremendous impact. Reality itself seemed to warp around the intrusion as something massive forced its way through dimensional barriers designed to repel exactly such incursion. The boundary hunter had arrived, evolved, enhanced, and determined to consume the fully realized nexus being that represented both its natural prey and its greatest threat. Perimeter breach complete, Izolda announced with remarkable composure given the circumstances. Hunter entity manifesting within outer chamber ring. Through the chamber's transparent walls, they watched as space itself tore open, revealing the boundary hunter's evolved form. No longer merely amorphous darkness. It had developed structure that incorporated elements from consumed convergent entities, crystalline appendages, energy manipulation organs, and most disturbingly, Atur suggesting emerging sentience rather than purely instinctual behavior. Evacuation protocols engaged, Izolda declared, activating emergency systems. All personnel to transition safe points immediately. No, Naruto countermanded, his voice carrying new authority that seemed to resonate across dimensional planes. Evacuation would simply delay the inevitable. This confrontation was always necessary. He stepped forward as the boundary hunter forced its way fully into the chamber, its massive form dwarfing the humans present. Yet Naruto faced it without fear, perceiving its true nature with his newly integrated awareness. I see you now, he addressed the entity directly. Not just what you appear to be, but what you truly are. A guardian of dimensional stability. A predator EV, evolved to maintain boundaries between realities. The hunter paused in its advance, multiple sensory organs focusing on Naruto with what appeared to be surprised recognition. For the first time, it encountered a fully converged nexus being capable of comprehending its fundamental purpose. Your function is necessary, Naruto continued, establishing communication on multiple levels simultaneously: physical sound, energy patterns, and dimensional resonance. But your methods have evolved beyond your original purpose. Consumption rather than containment. Predation rather than preservation. To everyone's astonishment, the hunter responded, not with words but with complex energy patterns that Naruto's converged perception translated into meaningful communication. It recognized him as both prey and peer, a nexus being whose potential threatened dimensional stability yet whose convergence represented evolutionary progression similar to its own development. There's another way, Naruto offered, extending his awareness toward the hunter without aggression. Harmony rather than conflict. Boundary maintenance through cooperation rather than consumption. The hunter's response was immediate and violent, a surge of predatory energy directed at what it perceived as weakness rather than opportunity. It had evolved too far into its consumptive nature to accept alternative approaches to its fundamental purpose. Naruto had anticipated this reaction. As the hunter attacked, he activated his fully integrated powers for the first time, not as separate systems but as a harmonized whole. Celeste. IAL energy created dimensional anchors throughout the chamber, spiritual essence established consciousness bridges between realities, and creative force manifested stabilization patterns that reinforce boundary integrity even as the hunter sought to destroy it. Extraordinary defensive implementation, Amara observed from behind him, having retreated to the control platform with Izolda. He's eating localized dimensional stability fields that counter the hunter's disruptive abilities. Not just defensive, Mitsuki noted from the observation area, her Byakugan perceiving patterns invisible to others. He's establishing containment parameters, creating a dimensional cage that matches the hunter's own natural frequencies. The boundary hunter recognized the threat too late. As it lunged for what should have been vulnerable prey, it found itself caught in a convergence field of Naruto's creation, a multidimensional containment system that used the hunter's own energy signature against it. The more it struggled, the more the containment adapted, creating perfect counterbalance to each attempted breach. What are you doing? Koyuki asked, her scientific mind struggling to comprehend. The energetic exchanges taking place beyond conventional physics. Establishing equilibrium, Naruto explained, maintaining perfect focus despite the enormous energies he was manipulating. Not destroying the hunter, that would create dangerous imbalance in the dimensional ecosystem. Instead, I'm resetting its evolutionary pattern to original parameters while establishing mutual recognition protocols. In simpler terms, he was reprogramming a multiversal predator, not eliminating its necessary function but redirecting its methods away from consumption toward more balanced approaches to maintaining dimensional boundaries. The process required delicate manipulation of reality itself, adjusting fundamental patterns at the convergence points between dimensions. Yet with his newly integrated abilities, Naruto performed this extraordinary feat with intuitive understanding that transcended formal training or academic knowledge. Gradually, the hunter's aggressive energy patterns shifted toward stability. Its evolved form reconfigured, shedding consumed convergent elements while maintaining its essential nature as boundary guardian. What emerged was still a powerful entity, a necessary foe. RCE in multiversal ecology, but one operating from balance rather than pure predation. As the transformation completed, Naruto established one final connection, a recognition pattern that would prevent future hunter entities from targeting him or other benign nexus beings. Not immunity from their attention, but mutual acknowledgement of complementary functions in maintaining dimensional health. The hunter, reset to its original purpose but retaining awareness of the encounter, withdrew from the integration chamber, not through destructive breach but via proper dimensional transition. It disappeared through a precisely formed portal, returning to its natural function with newfound equilibrium. In the chamber's sudden silence, the observers struggled to comprehend what they had witnessed. A.C. Confrontation expected to end in destruction had instead resulted in transformation, not victory through superior force but resolution through deeper understanding. Unprecedented outcome, Izolda finally stated, professional composure returning despite her evident amazement. No recorded instance exists of successful hunter entity reprogramming without destruction of either entity. Not reprogramming, Naruto corrected gently, his perception still operating across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. Remembrance. I helped it recall its original purpose beyond the evolutionary adaptations that had distorted its function. How? Amara asked, approaching him with newfound respect transcending academic interest. Such deep manipulation of dimensional constants requires understanding. Beyond conventional convergence capabilities. It wasn't just manipulation, Naruto explained, struggling to translate multidimensional concepts into language others could comprehend. It was recognition, perceiving the patterns that already existed and reinforcing those that supported proper function while allowing distorted patterns to dissipate naturally. He turned to Mitsuki and Koyuki. Ho had emerged from the observation area with expressions of wonder and concern mingled in equal measure. I'm still me, he assured them, recognizing their unspoken question. Just expand it. I can perceive and interact with multiple dimensions simultaneously, but my consciousness remains anchored in our original reality. Your energy signature has achieved stable convergence while maintaining dimensional identity integrity. Amara confirmed, her silver eyes examining him with evident fascination. A theoretical ideal demonstrated in practical manifestation. In normal human terms, Mitsuki requested, her practical nature asserting itself despite the extraordinary circumstances. He has successfully integrated all three power sources without losing his fundamental nature, Amara translated. Unlike transcendent nexus beings who evolve beyond dimensional constraints, he has maintained his connection to his origin reality while gaining the ability to perceive and interact with the broader multiverse. Which means I can go home, Naruto stated simply, the human desire beneath the multidimensional transformation making itself known. Back to our dimension, without creating instabilities that brought us here in the first place. Theoretically possible, Izolda acknowledged, approaching with calculated assessment evident in her expression. Though the Academy would typically recommend extensive adaptation training before attempting return transition. Your abilities, while stabilized, remain newly integrated. Controlled application in variable environments requires practice. I understand the mechanics now, Naruto replied with quiet confidence. The integration didn't just combine the energy systems, it provided comprehensive knowledge of how they function together. I can maintain dimensional stability while transitioning between realities. Izolda studied him with newfound respect. You continue to defy conventional parameters, Nexus being Uzumaki. If your confidence is justified, the Academy would not prevent your departure. However, she added with academic interest barely concealed beneath formal courtesy, we would request continued communicatio. And periodic return for documentation of your unique convergence pattern. You mean you want to study me, Naruto translated with a knowing smile. For mutual benefit, Izolda clarified. Your unprecedented integration success offers invaluable insights for future Nexus potentials. In exchange, the Academy can provide resources and information to support your continued development. A reasonable arrangement, Naruto agreed. Though my primary responsibility remains to my home dimension and its protection. Throughout this exchange, Amara had remained uncharacteristically silent, her elver eyes studying Naruto with an expression that seemed to contain unexpected emotional complexity. When she finally spoke, her typically formal tone carried subtle undercurrents of personal feeling. Standard protocol would assign a dimensional liaison to maintain contact with significant Nexus beings operating independently of Academy jurisdiction, she stated carefully. As the primary documentation specialist for your convergence process, I would be the logical assignment for this role. You want to come with us? Naruto realized, perceiving the unspoken request beneath her formal proposal. For research purposes, Amara affirmed, though her crystalline structures caught light in patterns suggesting more complex motivations. Your dimensional origin point remains largely undocumented in archival records. Comprehensive field study would significantly enhance multiversal knowledge databases and satisfy your personal curiosity about my world, Naruto added with gentle understanding. The integration had given him newfound insight into Amara's true nature, not merely an academic observer but a being with genuine curiosity and emerging emotional connections beyond her professional identity. Personal parameters may influence research objectives, Amara acknowledged with unusual candor. I find your approach to convergence enlightening beyond standard documentation value. Azolda observed this exchange with shrewd assessment. Designate Valus's request has merit from academic perspective. A qualified dimensional specialist accompanying a newly converged Nexus B. Aang provides optimal safety parameters for all involved realities. I have no objection, Naruto replied, sensing that Amara's presence would indeed provide valuable support as he learned to fully implement his new abilities in his home dimension. Though the final decision should include input from my original companions. He turned to Mitsuki and Koyuki, whose reactions to this proposal revealed their distinct personalities. Mitsuki's expression showed cautious assessment, weighing potential benefits against unknown variables with a guardian's protective instinct. Koyuki's features reflect immediate scientific interest, recognizing the value of Amara's multidimensional knowledge for her own research. An interdimensional expert could help us understand how to apply these new realities to our world's technological development, Koyuki noted pragmatically. I see significant potential benefits to collaborative research. Mitsuki's response was more measured. As long as our prima Rai objective remains returning safely to our dimension with stable conditions for Naruto's continued well-being, additional expertise seems reasonable. She studied Amara with careful assessment. Though, adapting to our world's customs and limitations would be essential. Cultural adaptation protocols are standard components of field documentation training, Amara assured her with unusual attentiveness to the personal concern underlying Mitsuki's practical statement. I would function within established social parameters of your dimensional framework. Then it's settled, Naruto concluded. We return to our dimension with Amara as dimensional liaison and academic observer. He turned to Azolda with formal respect. With the Academy's permission, of course. Permission granted with Saint Andard interdimensional protocols in effect, Azolda confirmed. Designate Valusa as authorized for extended deployment to Dimension E7392 for comprehensive documentation of the first successfully stabilized triple convergence nexus being in recorded Academy history. The formal terminology couldn't quite mask the unprecedented nature of their arrangement. A fully converged nexus being returnee to his origin dimension rather than remaining at the Academy or transcending to non-corporeal existence, accompanied by a dimensional specialist whose interest appeared to extend beyond purely academic documentation. As preparations began for their return journey, Naruto found himself contemplating the extraordinary path that had brought him to this point. From fatally wounded shinobi to daimon, Seonal refugee to fully realized nexus being, all within the span of mere weeks. The powers awakening within him had indeed transformed his existence, yet his fundamental self remained intact, expanded rather than erased by convergence. More significantly, the connections formed during this interdimensional journey extended beyond power systems and energy integration. The bonds established with Mitsuki, Koyuki, and now Amara represented a different kind of convergence, relationships that bridged different perspectives, backgrounds, and ways of understanding reality. As they prepared for transition back to their home dimension, Naruto realized that these personal connections might prove even more significant than his newfound abilities in the challenges that awaited them. For all his multidimensional perception and reality-spanning powers, it was these relationships that would keep him anchored to the humanity at his core. The Arcane Academy had indeed taught him about dimensional convergence, but perhaps not in the way its academic protocols had intended. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.